Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 152, 148, Survive. The terrified students watched as the three figures moved toward them at great speed, without the barrier to protect them, while the teachers showed nervousness. "Protect the students," exclaimed a voice. The teachers react quickly and arrange themselves in formation to guard the students. Gareth takes a quick look around and thinks, if Andre attacks, they will all die. The only chance for them to survive is if I keep Andre occupied. He stands up, wipes the blood from his mouth with his hand, and prepares to face the situation. "You must take care of them." "I'll hold Andre," Gareth announced telepathically to the teachers. As soon as they heard Gareth's voice in their minds, the teachers became serious and nodded, taking Gareth's order. In-hyuk and Seonga, not knowing what to do, watched the teachers preparing to face those three figures. Without warning, the teachers attack the figures together, but the figures only smile and counterattack. The attacks collide and cause an explosion. Seonga and In-hyuk act quickly, creating a barrier to protect the young men. The battlefield becomes chaotic, with various figures moving and launching attacks in all directions. Gareth, attentive, does not take his eyes off Andre, who smiles with his hands behind his back. The fight goes on for a few minutes, and Earthquake watches thoughtfully. "They'll take too long. Mr. Andre won't like it." Earthquake frowns as he notices several figures descending from the sky, some with wounds on their bodies, and in front of them three other figures with slight wounds are distinguishable. Gareth looks out of the corner of his eye and thinks uneasily. Can't they defeat them? They are the weakest, the real opponents are yet to act. Jiwoo watches the teachers and then looks around, where he sees the frightened youths and the other members of the top 10 standing silently with pale faces. Suddenly, Jiwoo took a step forward, catching everyone's attention. In-hyuk, Seonga, Subin, Leah, and Arthur kept silent, just watching him. Jiwoo advanced until he was in front of the teachers, his body erect and his face serious. He looked at the three figures before him and declared, "I will be your opponent." His words echoed like a rumble in the ears. Earthquake smiled coldly, while Gyorga and Marcus looked at Jiwoo and thought, "He's just like them, you didn't disappoint me." "Jiwoo," said In-hyuk and Seonga. The top 10 members and the young men from Korea looked at him in awe in front of everyone. The muscular man, with a necklace on his neck adorned with spikes, fixed his gaze on Jiwoo and said, "It will be my pleasure to exterminate you first." Habib Khan, with his deep black eyes and short black hair waving in the wind, observed Jiwoo with a smile and commented, "You are as arrogant as them, daring to challenge all three of us at once." In-hyuk and Seonga exchange a glance and move forward, while In-hyuk looks at the Korean boys and says, "Stay here." The two arrive in front of Jiwoo, and In-hyuk comments, "We will help you." Jiwoo looks at them with surprise and notices the smiles on their faces. The man with the necklace around his neck looks at In-hyuk and Seonga and asks, "Who are these arrogant guys?" The woman, with long hair tied back, dressed in the distinctive design of a frame member, takes a step and stands in front of In-hyuk. Habib, facing Jiwoo, smiles and says, "I'll face you," then turns his gaze to Seonga and In-hyuk and thinks, "Those two can face off in a 1-versus-1 against those two." The man with the spiked collar around his neck looks hostilely at Habib and comments, "You are lucky to be in that place." Then, he turns and looks at Seonga adding, "And you're unlucky to be touching me." Gyorga raises an eyebrow at the situation and thinks, "The battle gets longer. I don't know if it will be highly recommended, those two aren't as weak as the world thinks." Earthquake looks at the two newcomers and wonders, "Who are these two?" Marcus, on the other hand, focuses solely on Jiwoo. The woman was enveloped in a dark reddish aura, and with one of her hands directed towards In-hyuk, she launched a blast of her power. Just as the attack was about to hit him, In-hyuk placed both hands, generating a wind that blew away the enemy power. The next moment, a stream of wind surged at his feet, and at an incredible speed, he disappeared and reappeared in front of the woman, throwing a punch wrapped in wind. The woman quickly tried to protect herself, but when she came into contact with the attack, a gust of wind sent her flying, generating a shockwave of wind and a rumbling in the place. The place was plunged into silence, and Seonga, with a quick movement, expanded his power in the area, lowering the temperature and freezing the ground. Jiwoo frowned as he noticed the slippery floor, but quickly focused his attention on his opponent. Seonga raised his arm and ice formed on his palm, creating a large sphere of ice that he quickly launched towards his opponent without waiting for any second. The man quickly covers himself and a large explosion occurs. Jiwoo, seeing the explosion, quickly backs away, while Habib can create a barrier to protect himself. Earthquake's face turns grim. The WAA teachers and youths looked with surprise at the power demonstrated by Inhyuk and Seonga. Gareth also frowned. When the dust cleared, the two were revealed with their wounded bodies and their arms dripping blood. "You guys," muttered the man and woman coldly. Both were immediately enveloped in a reddish aura. Gyorge took a step and an energy field covered everyone present. "I'll take over from now on, get out of the way and stay out of the way," he announced. The ice on the ground slowly disappeared. Andre frowned as he felt a slight difficulty in generating his power and thought. "Gyorge Gisbert, after you lost your arm against Ares, your power increased too much." Gareth also frowned and thought. They're in trouble. With each step Gyorge took, the intensity of the disintegration field grew stronger. A grayish aura flashed on his body, and an arm of energy formed where his arm was missing. With a smile, he looked at everyone and said, "It will be my pleasure to exterminate you." With his hands, he formed a triangle, and a grayish aura flashed in his hands. A large triangle several meters high shot out towards his opponents, and in two other directions two other triangles just as large as the first one were formed. "Extinction Prison," Gyorge said with a malevolent grin. Habib and the two frame members saw the triangle approaching and ran quickly, escaping just in time before the three triangles joined together, forming a large triangle that locked Jiwoo and the others in. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 175. Chapter 153, 149, Climax. Gareth turns quickly, his eyes reflecting concern, while not neglecting his attention and care for Andre. From behind, Marcus frowns in bewilderment. Earthquake, with a serious expression, looks at Gyorge and then at the two members of his group who were injured when they failed to dodge his attack completely. Inside the triangle, Inhyuk and Seonga feel immense difficulty in releasing their powers. Leah, Jiwoo, Woon, Arthur, Duke and the other young people feel the energy leaving their bodies, taking away their ability to summon their powers. The wounded teachers try to attack the walls of the triangle, but as soon as they manage to release their powers, they disappear and only a small amount reaches the wall, which, upon full contact, fades the rest of their attack. Gyorge sneers and pronounces in a mocking voice. "You think too highly of yourselves." In the next instant, he snaps his fingers. A grayish whirlwind engulfs Inhyuk, Seonga, and the teachers. Subsequently, they all lie on the ground, severely wounded, dripping blood, without any reaction. "Mr. Inhyuk." "Mr. Seonga," Jiwoo expressed with obvious concern. The young WAA members watched in amazement as the unconscious teachers lay on the ground, severely injured. Seonga and Inhyuk, kneeling with battered bodies and dripping blood, looked on with serious faces. Inhyuk frowns, showing concern, as he turns his gaze to Gyorge. Gyorge, an awakened one in the top 50. Similarly, Seonga fixes his gaze on Gyorge, pondering. A top 50. This makes the difference between us. Gyorge smiles as he sees them conscious and comments. "Not bad. I expected nothing less from you, Inhyuk. You're second in command after Ji Young Yu, but..." He then turns his gaze to Seonga and continues. "From you, I didn't know, but you're decent. Although I'm surprised that you're not the leader, which leads me to assume that you're not the strongest in your organization. What an interesting situation. You have managed to hide your powers so well from the world," comments Gyorge in a joking tone. Andre frowns and thinks, so that guy using the wind is from the organization of that young lady who killed Jan. He was a very talented guy who had trained. "Earthquake," says Andre. Earthquake immediately turns around, and appears in front of him, kneeling down saying, "Sir, bring me the head of that guy named Inhyuk and kill all the others," Andre orders. Jisuk and Jiwoo get worried when they hear those words. Earthquake nods his head. Arthur, Gangseek feel a shiver, and the other young men with lower status tremble, barely able to stand. Andre looks at Gareth and says. The games are over, as his body flashes with a faint dark reddish aura. From afar, Marcus watches Gyorge and Earthquake. He decides to take a step until the three of them are standing in a line, looking at each other. "I hope they're not in the way," says Gyorge. Earthquake gives him an ugly look and replies. "Don't be so arrogant, you know your place." Gyorge smiles and says. "I'm not afraid to die, and you should know your place. I am stronger than you." Earthquake looks at him with his cold eyes, and just as he is about to speak, Marcus interrupts them and says. "Stop fighting. We're just delaying our purpose, and we're not interfering with each other. We can each accomplish our goal without all of us being affected." Earthquake looks at Marcus and then at Gyorge, and says. "We will settle our business later." Gyorge smiles and replies. "Let's finish them off, and I have no problem fighting you." An orange aura begins to flash on Marcus' body, followed instantly by a reddish-black glow on Earthquake and a grayish aura on Gyorge. "Hell's penance," Marcus uttered. An impressive burst of fire formed and, with a wave of his hand, the attack shot towards his opponents. Chaos, Earthquake commented with a gesture, and a stream of his power shot out towards his opponents. Disintegration, Gyorge announced as a triangle formed and, barely touching the ground, disintegrated. At the same time, in the triangle that held them imprisoned, one of its faces disappeared, allowing the 3 attacks to have a clear path. At first, the 3 attacks seem to repel and fight each other, but slowly their hostility disappears, focusing on the targets in front of them. Seonga and Inhyuk, pale, look resignedly at the attacks. Leah, Duke, Gangsik, Sucheon, and all the other young men watch the attacks, accepting their inevitable fate. Gareth, badly wounded, tries to make a move, but Andre attacks him, catching him off guard. Jiwoo clenches his fist, and a bluish flash of aura glows in his hand. Just then, a voice comes into his mind saying, "Don't worry, we'll solve the problem." The other 2 sides of the triangle shatter and are destroyed. In front of Jiwoo, who was a little further to the side and at the same height as Seonga and Inhyuk, the figure of a woman with black hair, dressed in a black suit, black shirt and black tie appears. Jiwoo recognizes her immediately and says, "Rebecca." Rebecca, with a very serious face, raises both hands, and a blue aura envelopes them. A huge purple vortex appears in front of her, swallowing the attacks. Behind Andre, another portal forms. Andre senses a danger and turns around, seeing a portal behind him. Out of that portal come the 3 attacks. Rebecca swallows the attacks completely through her portal and releases them in the direction of Andre, who quickly shields himself. A huge explosion occurs, and Andre, Gareth, as well as everyone present, are covered by the shockwave. Rebecca quickly creates a shield, protecting Jiwoo and herself. Seonga and Inhyuk act quickly, forming a barrier with every particle of their energy to protect the students and them. The shockwave stops, the dust of the place disappears, and Andre, his face very ugly but uninjured, looks angrily at Rebecca. Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge look with surprise at the woman in front of them a few meters away. Jiwoo reacts and looks back, seeing Seonga and Inhyuk kneeling on the ground, trembling with their eyes almost closed and covered in blood. Behind them are all the young men, including Wooin and the Korean quartet, covered in blood. "Guys," cried Jiwoo worriedly, trying to run towards them, but Rebecca's barrier prevented him. "Rebecca," commented Jiwoo. Rebecca turns around, her face pale and dripping a bead of sweat. She looks at Jiwoo with varied emotions. Jiwoo, immediately, senses the incredible effort Rebecca made and keeps silent. Jisuk, Wooin, Subin immediately respond to Jiwoo by saying, "We are fine, don't worry." Kane, Arthur, Duke, Jisuk, Subin and all the other young men look at Rebecca in horror. "Mr. Andre," Earthquake commented worriedly. Andre, without taking his cold gaze away from Rebecca, says in a furious voice, "Earthquake, bring me the heads of all of them." Gareth, kneeling on the ground and barely able to move, was hit the hardest by the shockwave. He looks at Rebecca as he thinks, what is she doing here? Suddenly, everyone feels a terrible aura in the sky, and the next moment they hear divine judgment. Everyone looks up and sees a man wrapped in electricity, pointing his hand downward. The next moment, the electricity obeys that person's will and descends on Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge. The electricity descends with shocking force, illuminating the sky with bright flashes. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 175. Chapter 154, 150, the Real fight begins. A rumbling shook the ground as Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge, with horror in their eyes, turned their gazes skyward. Without wasting a second, they sprang into action, unleashing swift and precise attacks. Electricity sparked as it came in contact with Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge's attacks, unleashing a shockwave that filled the air. In an instant, their attacks were pierced by the electrical energy, leaving them momentarily stunned. A terrifying roar echoed as the impact of the attack slammed into them, unleashing a shockwave that spread terrifyingly in all directions, spanning thousands of meters around. Rebecca, with a graceful wave of her hand, opened a portal that engulfed Gareth. In the blink of an eye, he appeared next to Inhyuk and Seonga, immediately concentrating to erect a protective barrier that enveloped them all. Habib Khan and the other two frame members tried to take cover, but were engulfed by the unstoppable shockwave, disappearing in the maelstrom. The shock of the young men could not be overlooked, and many unconsciously swallowed nervously, some falling to the ground trembling. Andre looked at the men in front of Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge, who were kneeling, their bodies scarred with wounds and blood. "Caden break," Andre said earnestly. Caden, with a big smile and his hands in his pockets, looked at Andre. Just then Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge attacked quickly, trying to catch him off guard. "Caden!" cried Jiwoo worriedly. Earthquake, Marcus and Gyorge smiled, but their smiles disappeared when they saw Caden's shield-covered figure slowly reveal itself as the dust dissipated. Caden smirked and, the next moment, a bolt of electricity descended upon them, vanishing them from the scene as blood splattered in all directions, accompanied by electricity and wind. "Flies," muttered Caden. The terrifying scene left the young men shocked, staring palely at Caden and some casting sidelong glances at Jiwoo. "Mr. Caden," shouted Jiwoo. Caden looked at Jiwoo with a warm smile and said, "I will settle this matter." He took a step forward, standing a few feet away from Andre, facing each other. Andre released a terrifying aura, causing the space to tremble as the ground cracked uncontrollably in all directions. "How dare you," said Andre angrily. Caden only smiled playfully as a blue aura, shrouded in electricity, was released from his body. The two huge auras collided, creating an incredible scene. The rumbling awakened the unconscious professors, who looked at the situation in confusion and amazement. Gareth, trembling, stood up and exclaimed, "Create a barrier." The teachers on the ground raised a hand and created a barrier that seemed to break in the wind. Inhyuk, Seonga, and Gareth brought more firmness to the barrier, but not enough to withstand the coming confrontation. With great concern, Gareth looked at Andre as he thought. "My spatial isolation disappeared long ago, the consequences of this are unimaginable." Jiwoo looked at Rebecca with concern in his eyes and asked, "Miss Rebecca, can you protect them?" Rebecca did not respond to Jiwoo and, with obvious anxiety, created a portal that engulfed them all, disappearing from the scene and leaving only Caden and Andre. Several meters away, Rebecca appeared with figures behind her. Seeing themselves far away from the confrontation, some of the young men sighed in relief, but Rebecca did not show a hint of relaxation. On the contrary, she was very worried. She immediately approached Jiwoo and said, "Stay as close to me as you can." Watching the figures of Caden and Andre in the distance, her reaction took the others by surprise. The next moment, a huge explosion was unleashed, and the shockwave was so large that in a couple of seconds it reached where they were. "Caden, you did something you shouldn't have done," Andre commented. Caden smiled and replied, "You attacked my disciple, are you willing to take the consequences?" Andre, furious, attacked, and Caden likewise defended himself, launching an attack of electricity. Both attacks collided, forming a gigantic explosion that covered dozens of meters. From that moment on, Andre and Caden began to exchange dozens of blows, destroying and devastating the city. Explosions and flashes were occurring everywhere, and the battle began to increase in intensity. From afar, Rebecca and her group looked on with difficulty to distinguish the figures. Only Jiwoo, Rebecca, Gareth, Inhyuk, Seonga, and Wooin knew who Caden was, as they had seen him fight before. Caden and Andre, in the sky and enveloped in an aura, looked at each other. With a wave of his hands, Andre created 4 spheres with his power where Caden, excited, looked at the attacks and quickly counterattacked. Andre's 4 attacks exploded, generating gigantic explosions. Andre, very attentive, after a few seconds, looked at Caden with a malevolent smile at the sight of him wounded and dripping blood. Caden smiles excitedly and launches a counterattack towards Andre. A vortex appears in front of Andre, absorbing Caden's attack. "You won't be able to get through my defense, no matter how strong you are," Andre sneered. Caden just smiled and said, "We'll see about that. I'll destroy the technique that so many of you are proud of." Divine Judgment. A terrifying attack descended upon Andre, who was startled by the magnitude of it. Quickly, with great seriousness, he created his defense. Immediately, Caden disappears and Andre, concentrating on defending himself, looks out of the corner of his eye at Caden appearing near him, with his 2 wide eyes showing his astonishment. Caden punched Andre right in the ribs. A terrifying blue flash lit up the place with a loud rumble and shockwave. From afar, everyone could see the battle, though not everyone completely. Only Gareth, Rebecca, Seonga, and Inhyuk can know what is happening completely. Gareth looks at Caden's strength in shock. Jiwoo, very worried, watches his master and sees how one figure disappears and appears in front of the other, throwing a punch and illuminating the place blue. Rebecca protects Jiwoo, who watches with his 2 wide eyes, while thinking. That attack. Back in the combat zone, Caden, dripping blood from his body, looks at Andre right in front of him, where his punch impacted. Andre is completely burned in that area, with his arm dripping blood and burned completely. The next moment, Andre vomits blood and looks in horror at Caden. Caden smiles excitedly and says, "That's it." Andre's ugly face disappears and only his rage and fury shows, he says, shaking with anger. "Caden." Andre's aura rises to a level never shown before, and with his hands, he simulates the charging motion of an arrow. Behind him, the aura grows without stopping. The next moment, he releases the arrow, and all that huge raging energy is directed towards Caden. Arrow of Destruction. Caden looks at the terrifying arrow with surprise, but then his face changes to excitement. Divine Judgment. The 2 terrifying attacks collide, forming an explosion of a magnitude never shown before during the confrontation. The expanding wave was so terrifying that the group dozens of meters away, in desperation, all took cover, being enveloped by it. The attack passes, and the place is plunged into silence. Andre breathes heavily, looking at Caden, whose blue shirt is completely stained with blood. His hands are dripping blood, and blood is dripping from his forehead. Andre looks furiously at Caden, who is not feeling much better, with broken ribs, an arm throbbing in pain and blood dripping from his forehead. At that moment, two figures descend beside Andre, catching him off guard. He was going to attack immediately, but upon seeing these figures, he realizes who they are and relaxes. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 176. Chapter 155, 151, end. Andre looks up and sees Schneider and Supri. With a grumpy tone, he asks, "What the hell are you doing here?" Caden, noticing the new guests, gives them a smile. Supri observes Andre's pitiful state and comments, "It would be best if you left the fight at this time." Andre, with a displeased expression, fixes his gaze on Supri and responds with determination. "You don't need to intervene. You didn't want to show up earlier, so don't come bothering me now. Get out of here. You're jeopardizing our interests," Schneider said seriously. Andre fixes his gaze on Schneider and responds, with a hint of disdain, "Don't talk nonsense. Someone had to carry out the plan, and I had to do it." Supri, silently but calmly, adds, "This battle does not benefit you at all. We will only become a target for other organizations. Look at the state you are in." Schneider, for his part, exudes confidence and grandeur, with his hands kept in his pockets in a nonchalant manner. Andre, with an icy gaze directed at Supri and Schneider, was about to speak when a voice interrupted him. "So they dared to show up," Caden said with a smile on his face. Andre, Schneider, and Supri watch Caden, frowning as they notice that, at an alarming rate, the wounds on Caden's body are healing. Only Caden's shirt shows the consequences, completely stained by a lot of blood and his face also dirty. Supri watches Caden seriously as he reflects. "I didn't know his healing power was so effective. Ares is said to have an incredible healing factor, capable of healing wounds in seconds that would be fatal to others, but I didn't know Caden also possessed it." "Andre, shall we continue with our confrontation?" Caden commented with an excited smile, as a blue flash emanated from his body. Andre smiles contemptuously and says, "Will you face the three of them?" "Ha ha 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 ha." Caden laughed, his aura rising as he responded, "Obviously, I won't pass up the opportunity to fight you three awakened ones from the top 10 of the world rankings." Andre, Schneider, and Supri frown, showing their unpleasant faces at Caden, making clear his annoyance at his words. "You know what, there's an interesting rumor going around." Caden commented with a smile. Andre, Schneider, and Supri frown upon hearing his words. "It is said that the three of you do not have the power to be in the top 10, and you only have that status because the three of you banded together to beat your opponent and take your spot," Caden said. With great excitement, Caden added, "I will show you my true power." Andre, Schneider, and Supri glare at Caden with angry and irritated looks. "Did they bother?" Caden said in a mocking tone. "Come on, I have no problem destroying you all," he added disdainfully. "Caden, your arrogance is unparalleled, and you are going to pay dearly for it," Andre said angrily. Caden just smiles and raises his right hand, forming electricity that crackles in all directions. A large amount of electrical energy is rapidly heading towards Andre. Andre places his two hands to protect himself, while Schneider and Supri also take cover. "Since when do you talk so much?" Caden said with some irony. In the next instant, two figures descend from the sky, positioning themselves to the right and left of Caden. Schneider looks at the men with straight, platinum white hair that falls to his shoulders, with pale skin and piercing blue eyes. Supri fixes his gaze on the young man with short white hair and deep emerald green eyes, noticing the presence of a beast on his shoulder. Andre, identifying the newcomers, says, "Ares and Cardian." Ares, with a smile, comments, "Reinforcements have arrived. Does the real fight start now?" Cardian, with his hands in his pockets, watches Caden and Ares, noting his excitement over the fight. And he shakes his head immediately. "Let's get started," Caden adds. Andre, Schneider, and Supri perceive the high probability of a confrontation. "Let's leave it here," Supri proposes. Caden and Ares smile, asking in unison, "Because?" Supri looks at them and explains, "You are at a disadvantage against us. You should accept it and end this here." "That?" Andre exclaims, looking at Supri in disagreement. Then he continues, "End this now. They attacked Frame. Are we going to put our heads down?" Sylvia, Ares spoke telepathically, and her eyes lighted up, covering the entire city in spatial isolation. Schneider watches Sylvia on Ares' shoulder with his eyes narrowed. Supri analyzes Sylvia and thinks, It is said that Ares has a contract with a rather powerful familiar, and having witnessed it firsthand, I can say it is true. Cardian looks at Ares with a frown and thinks. Are they really going to fight? The situation is not the best for us. Andre, noticing Schnatter and Supri's lack of intervention, clenches his fist and declares. This won't stay like this. Sooner or later, I will get my revenge, and he flies off without waiting for a response. Schnatter and Supri, seeing Andre leave, take one last look at Caden, Ares, and Cardian before following Andre's path. Cardian sighs in relief and comments. It was the best situation to avoid a direct confrontation. Then, he turns his gaze to Caden and continues. You must be satisfied with your little exchange against a top 10. Caden is silent for a moment and replies, no. I didn't fight at all. It was disappointing. I didn't even get to train and show off my new fighting style. He didn't show the full power of it. Ares glances askance at his teacher, and Cardian frowns. You hurt him quite a bit when you caught him off guard by changing your style and attacking melee. It will take him a while to recover, Cardian comments. Caden nods. Sylvia's spatial isolation disappears, and the awakened World Academy returns to normal. Sylvia lies peacefully on Ares' shoulder, not paying attention to her surroundings. A/N. I don't know if spatial isolation can do that, but Royst when he attacked the Academy, said something that the Academy could be rebuilt easily and if I'm not mistaken, he said something like they could activate spatial separation so that everything returned to normal and said that when he had already destroyed a part of the WAA. Rebecca and the others notice that the explosions have stopped, breathing a sigh of relief. However, that tranquility lasts only a few seconds, as Rebecca immediately turns her gaze in another direction and sees two young figures descend. Gareth recognizes the figures immediately and exclaims. Royst. Muse. Arthur, Kane, Duke, Gangseek, Jisuk and the other young people, upon hearing those names, immediately recognize the two figures in front of them. Rebecca calmly looks at them and then lets out a smile. What are you doing here? Gareth asked, as he nervously thought. Will your teachers be here? Royst steps forward and explains, we have been representing our teachers to have a dialogue with you. Muse stays behind, with a calm and relaxed attitude, observing everything from a distance. Gareth frowns and doesn't answer, waiting to hear more. We want to talk to you, adds Royst. Gareth's expression, as well as that of the other teachers, Inhyuk and Sianga, turns gloomy upon hearing those words. Dialogue. Gareth repeats, adding sarcastically. Do you think you can say that now? Royst does not give much importance to Gareth's words and responds, it is the best for both parties, so we avoid starting a war that involves even those in the top 10. Do you want to start a war that could cause the destruction of most of the world, commented Muse, who had remained silent throughout. Gareth frowns deeper, thinking. They are blaming us for starting a war when they attacked first. We'll see about that later, says Gareth. My teacher says that the best thing is for young novices to face each other and solve problems, adds Muse. Royst and Muse focus their gaze on the top 10 of the World Academy and say, in unison, in a tone of warning and coldness. Get ready, they then turn their gaze to Jiwoo. I hope to be able to face you in the near future, says Royst, while Muse analyzes Caden Brake's disciple. A spatial isolation covered the city completely, attracting everyone's attention. Jiwoo feels a certain familiarity with that power, but fails to fully recognize it. Gareth and the others immediately turn to the direction of the fight between Caden and Andre, now seeing 6 figures instead of 2. Gareth reasons quickly. It must be Schnatter and Supri, and possibly, one of the other 2 figures is Ares, but the other I have no idea. Muse and Royst exchange glances and understand each other without saying a word. That was it, Royst concludes, and Muse adds. We'll be in touch. The next moment, they both turn around. Royst stops and looks at Duke. Duke, Mr. Schnatter said to come with us to frame. Muse stops too and looks at Duke. Everyone turns to look at Duke in amazement. Duke himself is surprised, but with a smile on his face, he proudly advances until he reaches Royst, without being stopped by anyone. Muse leaves, Royst and Duke follow him, disappearing into the sky. Duke was a traitor. Leah murmurs in a low voice but audible to everyone. Kane and Arthur are shocked, unable to believe what they just witnessed. Jisuk, Wooin, Jiwoo, and Subin are also surprised. Inhyuk and Sianga reflect. Is Duke a disciple of Schnatter, a top 10 player in the world ranking? The place fell into silence for a period of time, until the spatial isolation disappeared, and the academy returned to normal. Gareth sighs and then turns to look at the academy, now empty and silent. Many guards and teachers were exterminated, he thinks ruefully. Then, she observes the young men and teachers near him in poor condition. How are they going to recover if I don't have staff here? I have to inform the World Association immediately, Gareth reflects. You can leave, go to your rooms and try to recover. I will call for reinforcements and doctors to be brought in immediately, Gareth comments with a strong voice. Rebecca looks at Jiwoo and says, "We have to go." Jiwoo nods without asking any more questions and helps Inhyuk to stand. Jisuk comes over to help as well, while Subin assists Seonga with Woon, and they move forward following Rebecca. Some young people from the WAA approach and help carry the badly injured teachers to a room to rest. Slowly, the place becomes empty, leaving Gareth alone. Kane, from afar, watches his grandfather covered in his blood, with his hands behind his back. Gareth looks at him and waves him off. Gareth looks at the illuminated city and says, "How many people must have died?" A shiver of pain runs through her entire body. Gareth sighs. "I haven't been in this state for a long time. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 177. Chapter 156, 152, Help. At night. At the World Awakened Academy. Jiwoo's room. Jiwoo adopted a meditative posture, surrounded by a blue glow, while Caden, next to him, was also immersed in the same luminous serenity. When Jiwoo opened his eyes, he directed his gaze towards Caden and formulated his concern. "Mr. Caden, will my brother and Mr. Cardian be okay?" Caden responded, opening his own eyes and looking at Jiwoo calmly. "Yes, don't worry so much. They are just observing the situation." Facing Jiwoo's frowning expression, Caden continued. "The families of these young people and the World Association should have sent a representative as soon as they found out what happened. With our presence here, they must be very worried about what might happen, besides another possible attack from Frame. Is the situation that serious?" Jiwoo asked. Caden smiled nonchalantly and said, "It's not serious, it's just annoying." High on the roof, Cardian and Ares watched the hectic activity in the academy, with people moving back and forth. "They're pretty fast," commented Cardian. Ares smiled and responded, "They are very afraid. If Frame attacks again, we will not intervene. Jiwoo is under our protection, and the rumor that Caden repelled Andre should have spread like wildfire." Cardian nodded and said, "I didn't think that the World Association would send that person here." Ares frowned and responded determinedly, "If we want, this place could be his grave, and I don't think only he will come. The others must be arriving." Cardian just smiled and crossed his arms as he watched the stars in the sky. Ares, with his hands in his pants pockets, followed Cardian's gaze toward the starry firmament. In a room. In the medical room, Arthur, Kane, Leah, and the other members of the top 10 lay with their bodies bandaged. Laura and Jean, upset at sharing the room, pushed their beds together with disapproving glances at each other. Their gazes converged on Arthur, who was circulating his force control. Kane, lying with his gaze lost, questioned himself silently. "Duke is a traitor. Since when? How did no one notice? Are the Grain family traitors too?" He looked up, scrutinizing each one. "Will there be another traitor?" Arthur opened his eyes, took a deep breath and squeezed his hand, feeling pain throughout his body. "I need to be stronger." Laura, with a mocking tone, looked at Arthur. "You seem quite worried." Arthur smiled and responded, "You should be, you lost miserably." Jean, next to Laura, frowned. Laura, angry, replied, "You lost twice." Arthur, unfazed, got out of bed, put on his slippers, and declared, "They should train instead of wasting time." His words caught the attention of everyone, who looked at him, waiting for him to continue. "You heard Royston Muse's words, they want this to be solved by the rookies, and if so, we will have to fight, and that means a fight to the death," Arthur said seriously. His words darkened everyone's expressions immediately. "You know what it means," Arthur concluded, leaving the room and leaving it plunged into silence. Gareth Loot Rain Office. Gareth, fully recovered and dressed in his usual attire, sat on a leather seat with one foot on the other, his hands resting on his knees. In front of him, another individual, muscular and around 190 centimeters tall, dressed in a peculiar manner with formal shoes, jeans, and a light blue shirt with the first two buttons unbuttoned, exposing his chest that has tattoos and a hat. Brown jeans crowned her shoulder-length hair, a tone similar to the hat, and her deep brown eyes. The men looked at Gareth and commented, "I was surprised when I found out that you survived after fighting a top 10. Mauricio Fernandez. World ranking, top 50. Awakened power, body absorption and release." Gareth, with seriousness on his face, responded, "I was lucky, just like these young people." Mauricio nodded sternly and asked in a serious voice, "Is it true that Caden, Cardian, and Ares are here?" Gareth nodded seriously. "Where is Caden's disciple, Break?" Mauricio asked. Gareth frowned, looked at him seriously, and answered, "In his room. Don't cause trouble, that's the only time I'll warn you." Mauricio smiled innocently and responded, "Worry about yourself. I already told you, Gareth stated forcefully, leaving Mauricio with an unpleasant expression. Your mission is to help protect this place until the plan is ready and not cause any more problems, Gareth commented. Don't worry, I won't do anything. Besides, someone else still has to arrive. If they show up, you and I won't be able to defend this place, and I really don't want to interact with Caden or Ares, Mauricio added seriously. In frame zone affiliated with Andre. A man knelt in front of Andre, who occupied his throne with his arm bandaged, as well as his entire torso. Andre tapped the armrests with his fingers, showing an unpleasant expression on his face. Supri office. Supri, with one foot over the other, stood in front of Muse, who was behind the desk separating them. Ma'am, the World Academy did not give us a response. I made them the offer, but they said they were going to talk about it, Muse reported. Supri nodded and responded. Give them time. It was the normal thing to do, but they won't dare start a war. That only hurts them, and no important person died. They just want to protect their image in the world. Muse nodded, showing understanding. Schnotter training area. Schnotter was standing, with Royst and Duke kneeling in front of him. Duke, you should focus on understanding the force control I taught you. You will most likely have to fight your former WAA teammates, Schnotter said. Duke, with a serious face but obvious inner happiness, responded. Yes, Mr. Schnotter. I won't let you down. I hope so, Schnotter responded. Then, he turned his gaze to Royst and added. Royst, you do the same. Train. The challenges ahead are not easy. Royst nodded in agreement. Where Astra? A tall, middle-aged man, pale skin, long black hair, a goatee, and a scar on his neck and part of his torso, meditated surrounded by a dark purple aura. Mr. Astra, Guram has returned, the kneeling young man reported in a worried voice. The aura surrounding Astra disappeared, and he turned his deep dark purple eyes on the young man. What happened? Was he able to complete that mission? The young man lowered his head, not daring to look at Astra, and responded. No, sir, Edward Whitehead managed to escape. Guram returned with serious injuries. Astra frowned and sentenced. Let him not show himself to me, as a dark purple aura enveloped him, emanating an evil and angry feeling. The young man frowned and added carefully. Sir, furthermore, Cardian has appeared. Astra immediately looked at the young man and asked. Where? At the World Awakened Academy, answered the young man. Astra frowned and questioned. World Awakened Academy. Frame attacked the World Academy and Caden Brake's disciple was there. It is said that Caden fought against Andre, ending in a draw, and then Schnotter and Supri appeared, as well as Ares and Cardian, explained the young man. Caden and Cardian are said to be together, he added later. Astra narrowed her eyes and muttered. Caden fought Andre, it was a draw, and Cardian was with him. The young man remained silent, not daring to interrupt Astra's thoughts. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 178. Chapter 157, 153, the problems continue. In Illuminati. Edward Whitehead was in a windowless room, surrounded by varied shades of green, with his right arm completely purple and a part of his neck up to his chest in the same condition. He was breathing hard, his face showing an expression of pain. He opened his eyes with effort and, with a pained look, stood up, leaving the room with difficulty. Outside, Harold, with his hands inside his medical apron, watched him and said, Everything is ready. Edward nodded, and Harold carefully led him to a medical room. In the room, there were many empty cylinders 3 meters high. Harold pressed one, and the lid opened as he introduced Edward, commenting, Don't stop circulating your force control, and you will recover soon. Edward nodded, pain showing on his face. Harold closed the door and headed to the center, where there were several computers. He activated a lever, and the cylinder where Edward was beginning to fill with a greenish-yellow liquid. Upon coming into contact with Edward, he felt pleasure and relaxation, until he was completely covered. On the monitor, Harold checked Edward's vital signs and sat up. Then, he turned the chair 360 degrees, looking at Edward. I will take revenge on you, Edward, Harold thought with a cold face and eyes full of murderous intent. The next day. At WAA. Jiwoo entered the room and saw Jisuk and Subin fighting, while Wooin was lying down similar to Gangsik and Sucheon. Seonga and Inhyuk were standing, looking out the window. Seeing Jiwoo, Jisuk, Subin, and Wooin ran towards him, and Jisuk commented. You finally deigned to come see us. Jiwoo smiled warmly and responded. Was occupied. Then, he looked at Seonga and Inhyuk and asked worriedly. How are they? Much better, Inhyuk replied, while Seonga nodded with a smile. Jiwoo smiled. How are things outside? Inhyuk asked seriously. People came to protect this place, and the atmosphere seems a little strange. I haven't had an opportunity to interact with anyone other than you, Jiwoo commented. Jisuk nodded and said. It was obvious that there if a traitor is surprising. Jiwoo nodded, as did the others. I don't know what will happen now, Subin expressed doubts. The place was silent until someone opened the door and a young man dressed formally entered. He bowed in greeting to Jiwoo and said. Mr. Jiwoo, the director wants to see you. Jiwoo was surprised, then nodded and looked at the others. I have to go, I will come see you soon. Everyone smiled except Sucheon. Jiwoo and the young man left, and the warm atmosphere turned serious. Things are getting complicated, Jisuk commented. A traitor being a member of the top 10 of this academy is an important development, Gangseek added. That's not all. The principal eliminated the vice principal. It is possible that there are even traitors among the teachers, Inhyuk said. But they were all killed because they could not resist the consequences of those fights, Seonga added. The youths frowned, and Inhyuk said. Many died. At the main gate, two very attentive guards saw a luxurious car approaching. A young-looking woman got out of the car, about 170 centimeters tall, with long black hair and golden eyes. She was wearing an elegant black dress. Next to her, a man of similar height, athletic build, dressed in casual and modern clothing, with dark hair and hazel eyes. Seeing the two people, the guards bowed and said. Mr. Mitchell and Mrs. Priya, it's my pleasure. Alex Mitchell. World ranking, top 50. Awakened power, energy manipulation. Priya Patel. World ranking, top 50. Power awakened, wind weapon creation. The two people nodded and took a step, entering the academy. A few moments later, 3 more figures approached the door, causing the guards to worry and frown. As they approached, they were seen to be 2 men and a woman dressed similarly, and 2 of them had a similar tattoo on their left shoulders. Recognizing them, the guards raised their hands, stopping them and asked cautiously. What are you doing here? Tanji smiled and answered. Because we have to respond to someone as weak as you. The guard frowned, and both guards got into a fighting stance. Tanji became angry and sought approval from Muraz and Gayan. Stop, came the imposing voice of a woman. Muraz, Gayan, and Tanji looked behind the guards, where Priya came walking calmly from the academy. Let them pass, we don't have time to waste on them, Priya said indifferently, showing no respect. She turned and left the place. Muraz, who had a sleepy attitude, woke up immediately, his face became serious, and in his mind he said a name. Priya Patel, a very powerful awakener. Gayan and Tanji frowned, showing unpleasant faces. The 2 guards stepped aside, allowing them to pass. The 2 guards stood aside, allowing them to pass. Muraz signaled and advanced, quickly followed by Gayan and Tanji. Gareth office. Jiwoo was sitting across from Gareth and Mauricio. Mauricio took an appraising and analytical look at Jiwoo and said. If I didn't know that you were that man's disciple, I would think they were lying to me. Jiwoo smiled as he scratched his head innocently, then his face turned serious and he asked. Why did they call me? Mauricio smiled and answered. Straight, I like it. We want to ask you when you're leaving here, Gareth asked calmly. Jiwoo was surprised and responded. I don't know, when the others leave, I guess. Gareth frowned, as did Mauricio. The academy is going to close for a while, this news has not yet been transmitted, but during the day everyone will be notified, Gareth commented calmly. Jiwoo was surprised and asked. Because. Jiwoo was surprised and asked. Because. Like why? Mauricio said, a little annoyed. Jiwoo frowned upon seeing the latter's bad attitude and did not answer his question. We want to prevent a possible second attack from Frame. Nobody knows what may happen. Better safe than sorry. When we have a good protection plan for young people, the academy will return to its normal operation, Gareth answered. Jiwoo was surprised and understood their concern. I'll ask when we will leave, Jiwoo replied. Suddenly, the office door opened and 5 people entered. Gareth immediately recognized the 5 figures, but his attention was focused on Muraz, Gayan, and Tanji. Mauricio frowned as he saw Muraz, Gayan, and Tanji and then looked at Alex and Priya. Muraz, Gayan, Tanji, Alex, and Priya looked at Gareth and Mauricio, and their gazes remained focused on Jiwoo. Muraz stopped looking at Jiwoo and looked at Mauricio, frowning at seeing him here. Gayan and Tanji did not take their eyes off the young man, and immediately recognized him as Caden Brake's disciple. I'm here because of him. Priya thought when she saw the young man and then added. I hope you don't cause me trouble, child. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 179. Chapter 158, 154, Everything Rotted Again. Tanji approaches Jiwoo with a defiant attitude, circling him while evaluating him and commenting maliciously. You are nothing like your teacher. Rather, you look like a mama's boy with a Machiavellian smile. Jiwoo frowns, observing him seriously, without a trace of fear. Mura smiles at Jiwoo's attitude. Gareth stands up and asks firmly. What are you doing here? Mura turns his gaze to Gareth and responds with determination. We are looking for someone. Gareth, Mauricio, Alex and Priya frown upon hearing his words. We heard that Cardian is here, Mura communicates, then turns his gaze to Jiwoo and asks with interest. Rumor has it that Caden is with your teacher and brother. I want to know where Cardian is. Gareth, Mauricio, Alex and Priya frown when they realize that they have come for Cardian. Mura's, Guyan and Tanji fix their gazes, waiting for Jiwoo's response. Jiwoo narrows his eyes at the question and answers firmly. Don't know. Everyone's attention is focused on Jiwoo. Tanji smiles contemptuously and warns. Kid, you better answer. Jiwoo frowns, but is unaffected by Tanji. Tanji, don't cause problems at my academy, Gareth comments. Tanji pouts. If you have any problems, solve them outside of my academy, Gareth says forcefully. Since when do you have the arrogance to say those words? Guyan responds annoyed. You know the situation the academy is in. We don't want any more unrest here, so it's best for everyone to resolve their problems outside, Gareth comments calmly. If not, we will have to intervene, adds Mauricio. Muraz and Guyan look at Gareth, Mauricio, Alex and Priya. It is not possible to win if a fight starts, but we could leave them seriously injured, thinks Muraz. It was unfortunate that these two arrived, but shall we leave it here? Guyan thinks. Alex, Mauricio and Priya watch, waiting for his response. We just want to know where Cardian is, Muraz says with a smile, looking at Jiwoo. I told you, I don't know, Jiwoo responds forcefully. Muraz and Guyan's faces turn ugly, showing their anger. Tanji, hot-tempered as he is, places her hand on Jiwoo's shoulder and asks in a cold voice. Where is Cardian? Jiwoo winces. How dare you touch him, he exclaims a voice, and a figure appears behind Tanji, causing a drop of icy sweat to slide down his forehead. Gareth senses a golden aura around Ares and shouts. No, as he quickly creates a spatial isolation. Tanji. Shouts Guyan, while Muraz is amazed by the rapid appearance of Ares. A dazzling golden light emanates from Ares' body, triggering a terrifying explosion that rumbles and destroys the entire academy. A few minutes ago. Jisuk, Seonga, Inhyuk and the others are immersed in an animated conversation when suddenly the door bursts open, causing everyone to be surprised. An elegantly dressed young man walks in eagerly and exclaims. Quickly leave the academy. Everyone must be evacuated. Without waiting for a response, he turns around and runs away. The scene leaves everyone in a moment of bewilderment, but after a few seconds, Seonga and Inhyuk look at each other and quickly get up, urging. Quickly leave. Upon leaving the academy, they meet all the students outside, while the guards give them instructions to evacuate through the main door. When the last evacuees are leaving through the door, a terrifying roar echoes. In plain sight, the academy cracks and a terrifying golden light emanates from the cracks. The next instant, the academy explodes, generating a loud roar and shock wave. Debris falls, dust makes visibility difficult, and slowly Ares is seen standing in front of Jiwoo, who is protected by a golden shield. A few meters away, Muraz and Guyan, with trembling hands and protected by a dark purple shield, observe Tanji on the ground, without any apparent reaction, his body charred from him. Tanji. Guyan exclaims, shocked. Gareth, Alex, Mauricio, and Priya are protected by a shield formed by their own power, watching Ares with grim expressions. Ares. Muraz mutters angrily. Ares smiles and declares. How dare they touch him? Why don't you fight me, as a golden aura slowly glows around them. Muraz glares ugly at Ares, and Guyan radiates bursts of a dark purple aura as he says. How dare you? Gareth, Mauricio, Alex and Priya exchange glances and take a step forward. They can't fight here, says Gareth, visibly upset. Don't get involved in this, or you will have another enemy, Muraz warns angrily, as he too is enveloped in a dark purple aura. Mauricio raises an eyebrow and says. Do you think we are afraid? Priya looks at Ares and comments. Ares, you are so arrogant to cause this scene. Do you really think we won't do anything? Ares smiles excitedly and affirms. Everyone come at once. I will destroy them all. A flash of great speed descends from the sky and lands on Ares' shoulder. It's done, that bird won't bother us, Silva says. Everyone focuses their gaze on the animal on Ares' shoulder. This will be our first fight together, Ares adds. Sylvia smiles and jumps, her body grows until it reaches 30 meters, while a terrifying celestial aura is released from her body. Ares grabs Jiwoo and throws him back, where he is caught by Caden, immediately catching everyone's attention. Jiwoo looks at Caden with concern and says, "My brother." Caden shakes his head and replies, "I'm here, nothing will happen." Ares, on top of Sylvia, looks down with an imposing attitude and says, "If you don't start, I will." In the sky, 5 crystal swords materialize, each hundreds of meters high and tens of meters wide, creating an imposing and dazzling presence. Mura's, eyes wide open, shouts at Gaian. "Gaian, protect Tanji." Gaian, observing the terrifying scene, quickly grabs Tanji and backs away. A chill runs through the bodies of Gareth, Mauricio, Alex, Priya, and Mura's when the imposing swords descend. The huge crystal swords descend on each of their heads, creating a terrifying scene. The tips of the swords light up on fire, generating terrifying gusts of wind. Gareth, worried about not receiving a response from Phoenix, acts quickly. A whirlwind of golden aura forms as he raises both hands, directing all that burst of energy towards the sword. The crystal sword and Gareth's attack come into contact, unleashing a powerful explosion that illuminates the area and shakes the ground. Priya, with her eyes slightly narrowed, looks at one of the crystal swords, and suddenly, a gigantic tornado of wind is unleashed. However, upon closer inspection, they are small wind swords that are almost imperceptible to the human eye. Wind sword tornado. Priya's attack hits the sword, generating an explosion. Slowly, the crystal sword begins to crack. Mauricio smiles and his body is enveloped in a dark grayish aura. With a great leap that elevates him tens of meters, he places himself in front of one of the swords and holds the tip of the sword with both hands. Slowly, the sword energy is transferred towards Mauricio, who smiles from side to side. Sylvia and Ares notice this and both think, "You will be the first." Immediately, the cracked sword is flooded with more energy. Mauricio notices that the sword loses power and becomes pale, cracking. However, suddenly, his face changes and the sword regains its radiant color, filling with a terrifying momentum. Due to the collision, a gust of wind is unleashed, causing Mauricio to lose ground and retreat. Mauricio opens his eyes in shock and with all his strength, he tries to absorb the energy, but the sword contains endless energy. Finally, he is slammed into the ground, generating a powerful explosion that shakes the scene. Alex launches a terrifying attack with his power that hits the sword, generating a chilling explosion that resonates throughout the environment. Muraz looks at the sword in amazement and immediately releases a huge amount of poison. Upon coming into contact with the sword, it slowly corrupts, but it is not enough and the sword continues its path towards him. Muraz, with a movement of his hand, directs all the poison to deflect the sword, generating a great explosion and confrontation between both attacks. The scene becomes a whirlwind of energy and colors. 5 explosions form and slowly converge into a single explosion, creating a dazzling explosion that illuminates the stage. The desperately fleeing students and guards stopped in their tracks as they saw a series of explosions behind them. The guards gathered in a circle to protect the others who were trying to flee. Tension and fear were palpable in the air. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 180. Chapter 159, 155, Revenge. The dust slowly dissipates. Gaian, a few meters away, holds Tanji in her arms without a single wound, watching the scene with horror. Gareth astonished, with both hands trembling, burned, and stained with blood. Mauricio is embedded in the ground, where a large hole has been formed by the explosion. With difficulty, he frees himself from the debris, stands up, and vomits blood. A deep cut on his stomach stains his clothes, which are now dirty and torn, giving him a desolate appearance. Alex is covered in small burns, each adorned with drops of blood that snake down his body. Muraz remains kneeling, blood dripping from his face forming small puddles on the floor, creating a somber contrast to his calm expression. Gaian materializes in front of him with obvious concern. She looks in distress at a cut that extends from just below her right eye to the base of her neck. "Muraz," Gaian murmured, shocked. Muraz responds with a liberating smile as she stands up. "I'm fine, at least I saved my eye." Priya, with a serious expression but marked by minor wounds and cuts on her clothes, reflects. Hurting several at once, this is not good. Taking a few steps forward, Priya places herself in front of Ares, several meters away from the other 4. "Ares, you've gone too far." Ares looks at her and answers. "You attacked my brother, so I assumed you did too." Silence takes over the place as everyone casts hostile glances at Ares. Caden, watching from the rear with Jiwoo, comments calmly upon seeing Jiwoo's concern. "Don't worry, they are not enough to defeat them. I will intervene if necessary." Suddenly, a figure descends from the sky and positions itself next to Ares, attracting everyone's attention. Cardian, surrounded by a golden aura, with his hands in his pockets and a relaxed attitude. Gaian and Muraz narrow their eyes, staring intently at Cardian. Mauricio, Alex, Priya, and Gareth frown. I'll take care of those two, you take care of the others, Cardian announces calmly, breaking the silence with determination. Ares smiles and answers. If that's what you want, I have no problems. Excitedly, Ares declares. Sylvia, let's begin. Sylvia smiles and responds confidently. Clear. At that moment, a white light descends from the sky with force, crashing into the ground. The collision generates a small gust of wind and a rumble that echoes through the air. The light dissipates, revealing a figure a few meters behind Gareth, Priya, and the others, and right in front of the students and guards who were observing the situation with growing concern. The white light fades, revealing a young man with perfectly combed black hair, dressed in a doctor's coat. His hands rest in his pockets, and he wears black pants and shoes with obvious elegance. The sudden presence of this young man captures the attention of everyone in the place. Gareth thought with disgust. Harold, and then cursed inwardly. What the hell are you doing here? Why is everything getting more and more complicated? Harold's entrance attracted everyone's gaze, including Guyan and Muraz, who watched the new guest cautiously. Harold took a step forward, and his aura was released uncontrollably, enveloping his body in a silvery glow. His gaze focused on Guyan and Muraz as he declared. You two are dead. His words echoed in the air, capturing the attention of everyone present. Muraz frowned and took a step forward, warning Guyan. Be careful. Harold. Muraz murmured, his tone icy. Since when do you dare to be so arrogant? They will pay me. How dare you? You dirty slaves, Harold said with murderous eyes, generating threads that he concentrated to form a giant icicle with a sharp tip. He threw it directly towards Muraz. Cardian, from a distance, observed the situation silently, his eyes frowning at Harold's aggressive attitude. Muraz responded with a poison attack, and both attacks collided, causing a powerful shockwave that left destruction in its wake. Harold fought back, unleashing an exchange of blows that wreaked havoc on his surroundings. Apparently, we have someone new joining the fun, Ares commented with a smile. There's nothing exciting about this, Priya said lamely, adding. Get ready. Ares smiled and exclaimed. They finally decided to fight. Meanwhile, Cardian watched the battle between Harold and Muraz calmly. Gareth shook his head and declared. It is not the best to fight, while he protected himself and watched the fight between Harold and Muraz. Priya glances at Gareth, but her icy gaze didn't affect Gareth in the slightest. Mauricio and Alex walk, placing themselves at the same level as Priya. Things won't stay like this, Mauricio comments, touching his stomach with a stinging pain, while he looks at his bloody hand. Alex, without saying a word, fixes an intense gaze on Ares. Ares smiles evilly and, together with Sylvia, disappears, leaving only a gust of wind. Reappearing in front of her three opponents, Sylvia waves her tail, launching a flurry of hexagonal crystals. Simultaneously, Ares creates a blast of light that envelopes the three, encasing them. Gareth next to them quickly retreats when he realizes that the attack is not directed at him. Priya, Alex and Mauricio react quickly, launching powerful attacks against the wall while avoiding Sylvia's attack. The attack created by Ares breaks, and Sylvia takes the opportunity to launch a quick blow with her tail towards Mauricio at an astonishing speed. Mauricio barely perceives a shadow before he feels the impact on his ribs, which immediately fracture, sending him flying several meters. Alex and Priya's eyes widen in shock. Ares, on top of Sylvia, disappears and reappears between the two, throwing a blow. Alex raises his hand and envelopes Ares's punch with his energy. The impact creates a shock wave that flings him away. Priya, for her part, reacts in time and generates a gust of wind that collides with Ares's fist. The battle escalates and Cardian, in the distance, frowns as he watches Priya's quick reaction. His gaze wanders to Harold, whose arm is dripping with blood, and Muraz, his body covered in cuts from some sharp object. The situation is going well, but Ares could have problems facing Priya with the other two getting in the way, Cardian thinks. He turns and faces Mauricio and Alex, who stand up from the ground with hostile expressions. Jumping towards them, Cardian stands in front of Mauricio and Alex seriously. I'll take on you too. Mauricio and Alex remain silent, but with determined faces. Gareth frowns at Cardian. Cardian, don't get involved in this, Mauricio says coldly. Cardian smiles and a black, violent and sinister aura is unleashed. His smile turns devilish, and two devil wings emerge from his back as a dark liquid appears between him and his opponent. Take one more step, and you're dead. Cardian warns coldly. Mauricio and Alex show contempt and advance, ignoring his words. The next moment, Cardian immediately attacks them. Caden and Jiwoo, from their distant position, watch as Cardian takes action in battle. Then, his gaze turns to Ares, who lies with his right arm shattered, bleeding profusely, one drop after another falling to the ground from his index finger. Ares, with a defiant smile, looks at Priya, who has retreated a few steps back, showing minor burns on her arm. Ares's expression reflects satisfaction at the display of power of his opponent. Ares, with excitement in his voice, comments. Not bad, someone like you didn't disappoint me, as his severely injured arm recovers in the blink of an eye. Priya, watching Ares's quick recovery, frowns and a terrifying green aura surrounds her. Her eyes take on a cold glow as she declares with determination. I hope you are able to face me. Instantly, Ares reacts by launching a beam of light, while Priya responds with a powerful gust of wind. The elements clash in a spectacular clash, generating palpable tension in the air. From a distance, the guards and students observe the various battlefields. Concern is reflected on the faces of the students, who seek to learn from the intense struggle despite the fear that consumes them. Meanwhile, the guards do their best to protect the students, aware of the increasing danger of the situation. A guard, sensing the increasing intensity of the battle, suggests cautiously. Let's go back little by little, very carefully. The guards nod in agreement and begin to slowly back away. However, the students, even as fear consumes their pale faces, cannot look away from the battle. With determination and eagerness to learn, they remain attentive, although the shock waves gradually envelop them, reducing visibility and creating a more tense and difficult to decipher environment. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 181. Chapter 160, 156, Cardian v/S Mauricio Fernandez y Alex Mitchell. Cardian's demonic wings pounced on Mauricio and Alex, who skillfully dodged his deadly attacks. Upon touching land, a dark liquid spills over his feet, spreading quickly and enveloping them completely. Surprised, Alex generated an aura around him that intensified until it finally erupted in a powerful explosion, completely disintegrating the dark viscous liquid that enveloped them. Mauricio, submerged in the dark liquid, reacts instinctively and jumps, managing to free himself. However, in the sky, the shockwave from the other battlefield's attacks hits him, destabilizing him and endangering his balance. Taking advantage of the opportunity created by Mauricio's mistake, Cardian creates ropes that emerge from the dark liquid, throwing it forcefully back towards the sticky substance. Cardian smiles evilly, wrapped in a protective aura that acts as a shield, protecting him from the shock waves generated by the other confrontations. Mauricio is slowly enveloped by the dark liquid, but a grayish energy intervenes, cutting the rope that imprisoned him. In one agile movement, Alex grabs Mauricio's clothes, pulls him out of the puddle and, without hesitation, launches a powerful attack directly towards Cardian. Cardian frowns upon witnessing Alex rescue Mauricio, and immediately generates a shield to protect himself. In the air, holding Mauricio, Alex gives him a serious look and says with determination. Focus, you'd be dead by now if it weren't for me. It's time to fight seriously. Mauricio glares at Alex as he experiences a stabbing pain in his stomach. Damn it, Mauricio thought in frustration, abruptly freeing himself from Alex. Alex frowns and warns. Don't get distracted. There are too many distractions in this fight. Mauricio advances with determination, ignoring Alex's comment. The dark liquid retracts momentarily, revealing Cardian, now with a more focused and defiant expression. His devil wings spread further, ready for the next assault. Alex and Mauricio prepare to counterattack, but Cardian takes the initiative, unleashing a hail of dark projectiles. Each of them cuts the air with the deadly intention of reaching and annihilating the two opponents. Alex deploys his abilities, creating a protective barrier that successfully repels Cardian's deadly dark projectiles. Mauricio, enveloped in grayish energy, reacts quickly by creating a solid barrier that effectively blocks incoming projectiles. Both Alex and Mauricio are left unharmed by Cardian's assault. Cardian, far from giving up, dives into the dark puddle and reappears stealthily behind Mauricio and Alex, unleashing a surprise attack. However, Alex quickly detects this and responds with a counterattack, forcing Cardian to retreat. Meanwhile, Mauricio rushes towards Cardian, ready to confront him hand to hand. Cardian unleashes a torrent of dark energy in an attempt to stop Mauricio, but the latter is undeterred. Instead, he absorbs the energy, weakening Cardian's attack and becoming stronger in the process. Surprise is clearly reflected in Cardian's eyes, although he does not allow intimidation to dominate him. He can absorb much more energy than he thought, reflects Cardian. Alex, for his part, manipulates the energy around him to create illusions and distractions. While Cardian struggles to discern between the images created by Alex, Mauricio moves stealthily, absorbing the residual energy floating in the air. Alex and Mauricio's combination of skills begins to tip the balance in their favor. Alex channels the manipulated energy into a concentrated beam, while Mauricio advances decisively towards Cardian with a powerful punch, enhanced by the absorbed energy, attempting to directly hit the opponent at the most vulnerable point. Cardian, now at a disadvantage, deploys his demonic shield to resist the attacks. The collision of powers generates an explosion of light and energy on the battlefield. In the midst of the glare, the three combatants remain standing, but Cardian shows signs of seriousness. The combination of energy absorption and manipulation proves to be more bothersome than he had anticipated. Although they are tired, Alex and Mauricio maintain their unwavering determination. Ready to give up? Alex said, determination in his voice, as Mauricio prepares to absorb any remaining energy Cardian may release. Cardian smiles and then a malicious, sadistic laugh echoes through the air. Ha 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 ha, completely changing the atmosphere of the battlefield. Alex and Mauricio frown simultaneously, exchanging meaningful glances. They both share a common thought. I knew his personality was strange, just like Caden's, but I never thought they would be so similar. A dark, terrifying demonic aura expands from Cardian outwards. The next instant, he unleashes a dark blanket of energy that envelopes both Alex and Mauricio. Dark energy manifests a relentless desire to exterminate any life form it touches. Alex, struggling to maintain his protective aura, senses how energy manipulation becomes more difficult. A feeling of weakness slowly takes over him, evidencing the overwhelming pressure imposed by Cardian's dark energy. Mauricio, on the other hand, feels increasing fatigue as he tries to absorb the dark energy around him. Taking advantage of his opponent's weakness, Cardian unleashes a direct attack. His devil wings cut through the air with ferocity, hitting Alex and Mauricio mercilessly. They both quickly get up, but two more attacks are already on their way. Alex tries to create a defensive barrier quickly, but Cardian breaks through the defense with a precise attack. Mauricio struggles to stay on his feet as dark energy envelopes him. Cardian pauses for a moment, looking at his injured opponents with satisfaction. It seems I underestimated his abilities, but you guys can't compare to me, he murmurs with arrogance and an ecstatic smile. Alex and Mauricio, very wounded, counterattack desperately. Alex releases a blast of power at him, and Mauricio releases all the absorbed energy. The attacks move forward, tearing apart the environment, merging to create a powerful attack. Cardian smiles and a dark aura protects him, the attack envelopes him, creating a large explosion that echoes through the place. Alex and Mauricio breathe heavily, exhausted. Suddenly, they are amazed to see a dark puddle slowly covering their feet, which grows and engulfs them. Gareth, from afar, watches as a devilish mouth swallows them, being shocked. Since when did Cardian become so strong? The dust disappears, the dark liquid too, and you can only see Cardian with his clothes a little messy and slight cuts dripping blood all over his body. Alex and Mauricio are nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, an aura begins to melt the concrete, causing Cardian to frown and look at Harold's confrontation. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 182. Chapter 161, 157, Harold v/S Muras. The sinister figure of Muras looms on the horizon, his dark purple aura standing out. At the other end, Harold emerges, surrounded by a silver aura that radiates intense power. Harold's threads dance around him, forming hypnotic patterns as they intertwine in the air. The silver energy that emanates from it mixes with the dance of the threads, creating a fascinating image. Muras dashes forward with impressive speed, leaving behind trails of darkness that ripple through the air. The battle breaks out with a flurry of agile attacks from Muras. Harold responds masterfully, weaving an intricate web of threads that follows his opponent's every move. Muras unleashes poison power from him, launching poison thorns towards Harold. However, the threads woven by the latter transform into a protective shield, deflecting the thorns with millimeter precision. Harold counterattacks with agility, launching razor-sharp threads towards Muras. However, with astonishing control of his power, Muras creates threads of poison to deflect attacks. In an instant, he releases a large amount of poison into the air and rushes towards Harold, ready for the next move. The poison in the air mixes with the intensity of the battle as Harold and Muras face each other in a dizzying exchange of blows. Harold's threads snake through the air, while Muras moves, deftly dodging the attacks of the skilled thread manipulator. With an agile spin, Muras unleashes a series of swift kicks and punches, each wrapped in venom. Harold responds with the flexibility of his arm, deflecting attacks and counterattacking with quick strikes. However, slowly, his hands begin to show wounds from the poison. The fight is transformed into a choreographed dance, where each movement is calculated and executed with precision. In an instant, Muras vanishes into the shadows, only to reappear behind Harold with a series of swift attacks. The threads, however, twist in defense, forming a protective barrier that blocks Muras' poison attacks. Harold seizes the opportunity and quickly weaves a web of threads around him, attempting to trap Muras in his ingenious trap. Muras, with impressive agility, corrupts a large portion of the threads with poison and manages to dodge the vast majority, but some graze him, leaving him vulnerable for a brief moment. The confrontation continues with a combination of acrobatic movements, thread attacks, and poison blasts. Muras, taking advantage of his speed, closes the distance between him and Harold, unleashing a terrifying series of venom blasts. Harold, for his part, uses his threads to create a shield, blocking and deflecting incoming blows. Suddenly, his eyes light up, and sharp threads shoot out in all directions. Muras releases a large wave of poison that collides with the threads, corrupting them and causing a shocking explosion. The dust clears, revealing Harold with blood stains on his body and wounds from the poison. Manhwas with his large previous wound under his cheekbone dripping blood, and also his stomach and arms have small holes, evidence that some threads passed through him. The two stare at each other from a few meters away. Guyan, with Tanji in his hands, descends from the sky and says, "We must go, finish him off together." Manhwas nods fiercely, and Harold smirks as he releases his aura without holding back. Manhwas and Guyan, with their dark purple auras, prepare to launch a combined attack against Harold, his auras uniting in a formidable display of power. Land of the Dead. The aura of the two grows to an incredible magnitude, corrupting everything in its path and affecting the other battlefields. A massive skull of death emerges and shoots towards Harold, carrying with it the combined power of Manhwas and Guyan. Gareth watches the impending attack with concern and creates a barrier that envelopes Harold, Manhwas and Guyan, providing necessary protection against the destructive force ahead. The dark aura of Manhwas and Guyan looms over the battlefield, but Harold shows no signs of fear. Instead, he channels his energy, focusing all of his power into a single thread. Rending Edge. The atmosphere is charged with tension as Harold's final attack begins to take shape. Manhwas and Guyan grasp the magnitude of the attack. Their faces reflect surprise at Harold's imposing display of power. The thread cuts through the air with impressive speed, leaving a glowing trail in its wake. The skull and a large concentration of threads collide, forming a terrifying shock wave and rumbling that shakes the battlefield. From the explosion, a figure is thrown back in a flash, passing between the WAA guards and teachers, taking them by surprise. The figure finally crashes into the buildings, leaving a wake of shock and awe. The dust clears, and the explosion reveals that where there were once 3 figures, there are now none. In the distance, Harold, embedded in a building and very injured, gets up with great difficulty. His appearance is deplorable, full of dust and with some debris on his body, but he shows indomitable determination. Standing, Harold staggers, vomiting blood and beginning to shiver. "Shit, sooner or later, I'll get revenge," Harold said to himself, when a white light descended from the sky, enveloping him. The light disappears and Harold is no longer there. Far away, Manhwas and Guyan descend from the sky. "We must return quickly," Guyan commented with concern, watching Tanji and Manhwas, while his right arm slowly dripped blood. Manhwas vomits blood and says, "That guy is stronger than we thought, he can be at the top of the top 50. Guyan clenches his right fist, bathing his hand in blood, and responds, "We must eliminate him. Edward was lucky to get out alive, someone else who uses our powers cannot stay alive. That's why he must have attacked us, we must inform Mr. Astra," Manhwas said, wiping the blood from his mouth and taking a step to leave. If you want to access early chapters, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 183. Chapter 162, 158, Eleceed v/S Priya Patel. The contest between Ares and Priya took place in an impressive setting, where the golden light and the green of the wind majestically divided the battlefield. The initial silence was interrupted by the rustle of golden particles dancing at Ares' feet, accompanied by the gusts of wind that enveloped Priya. Ares' hand began to flash with a golden aura as he raised it, releasing a beam of light that rushed towards Priya. With agile movements, Priya erected a wind barrier that deflected the lightning into the sky, giving life to a spectacle of flashes. Ares quickly launched spheres of light towards Priya, who responded masterfully by creating blades of wind that cut the spheres in mid-flight. Ares unleashed a shower of resplendent rays of light as he determinedly advanced towards Priya. The latter she responded with agility, weaving a swirl of wind around her to deftly deflect the luminous spheres. Priya quickly counterattacked by launching sharp spears of wind towards Ares. Stopping their charge, Ares deftly dodged most of them, although one of the spears managed to leave a wound in his shoulder. Ares frowns, but his wound fades in a matter of seconds, as if it never existed. Priya glares at Ares and reflects. His ability to regenerate her is ridiculous. I have never witnessed anything like it, not even among the best in the top 10. Ares, excited, channels her power, unleashing blasts of light that envelop Priya like a glowing tornado. The latter created a windshield to resist the impact. At the same time a green aura formed in her eyes and a large explosion occurred. In the midst of the chaos, Priya counterattacked with a dizzying series of wind blades, taking advantage of the distraction generated by the shock wave. Ares, extremely focused, fires a beam of light that collides with the wind blades. Looking up, he sees Priya in the sky, one hand raised, shaping a gigantic spear of wind. Ares smiles and Sylvia appears above Priya, launching a blow with her tail. Priya, astonished, perceives the attack from the corner of her eyes before being hit. She feels her ribs crack as she is sent flying to the ground. In turn, Ares opened his eyes in surprise as he realized that Priya also executed her attack, and the wind spear began to descend at a terrifying speed. He smiled and met the attack with determination. A formidable roar echoed throughout the place, shaking the ground for dozens of meters around. Sylvia descends from the sky next to the enormous crater formed by the explosion. From the rubble of her, a figure stands up with a smile on her face, although her condition is apparently not the best. Sylvia, puzzled, asked. Why did you get that attack? The wounds on Aries' body faded, but the scars on his clothing persisted, revealing the vestiges of the intense confrontation he had had. You didn't kill her? Aries asked, a hint of sadness in his voice. I don't think so. I didn't attack her with everything, Sylvia responded thoughtfully. A few meters away, a figure rises from the ground, showing obvious signs of having suffered severe deterioration. Priya looks angrily at the terrible wound on her stomach and exclaims angrily. Damn ugly animal. He takes a step and feels a sharp sting in the wound. Looking down, he notices that his clothes are even more soaked with blood in that area. This is not right, Priya thought before looking up at her opponent a few meters away. But there is no turning back. A green aura spreads throughout the battlefield, taking everyone off guard and leaving the vast majority of those present in awe. Medieval warrior. Above Priya, small wind swords merge to create an imposing medieval warrior with a shield in one hand and a spear in the other. The imposing warrior, with his armor and weapon, emanates a terrifying presence. Cardian, in the distance, frowns at Priya's next attack and decides to leave the scene. Caden narrows his eyes slightly and raises a hand, enveloping himself in a blue aura. Jiwoo looks at his brother with concern, and Cardian descends from the sky with his hands in his pockets. Even further away, the guards show concern as they observe the imposing warrior, while the young men remain shocked and astonished. Suddenly, a figure descends from the sky, taking everyone by surprise. Get ready, Gareth said, standing in front of everyone. Yes, Director, the guards responded, ready to deal with the aftermath of the attack. Aries watched the impending attack and said to Sylvia. Let me receive it, don't interfere. Sylvia nods, and her body shrinks. Aries steps forward, standing in front of Priya a few feet away, his golden aura flashing brightly. The wind warrior takes a step, and the spear descends in the direction of Aries, shaking the place. Heavenly punishment. Aries points his hand towards the spear that is approaching at breakneck speed, and light begins to flash in all directions. Then, a terrifying beam of light is launched towards his opponent's attack. The spear and the terrifying beam of light collide, resulting in a terrifying explosion that destroys everything in its path. Time passes and the aftermath of the explosion slowly disappears. The young students and WAA guards watched expectantly and in a cold sweat as the fight ended. Gareth frowns and heads toward the combat zone, his face taking on a stern expression. Priya struggles to stay on her feet, her body swaying dangerously from side to side in a desolate state. Blood soaks every corner of her battered face and body, painting a grim picture of her exhaustion. Aries, although standing, does not escape the cruel reality of battle. His body bears the scars of an intense confrontation, each wound oozing blood, creating a crimson tapestry on his battered skin. Aries' face reflects the harshness of the combat, with cuts that continue to drip blood, marking the ferocity of the contest. Sylvia remains at Aries' side, seemingly unfazed, while he scratches himself with her paw nonchalantly. Gareth descends from the sky, securing Priya, who falls unconscious in her arms. Aries looks at him and, despite the wounds that afflict him, smiles a serene and determined smile. Gareth looks at Aries' sadistic smile, adorned with blood on his face, and declares, "Let's leave things here." Aries calmly places her hands in his pants pockets, maintaining his calm expression despite the injuries he carries with him. "Things have already gotten out of control, so do what you want, but let it be outside of my academy," Gareth said while from the sky, Phoenix flapped her wings and descended. In the next moment, the spatial isolation disappears, and the academy returns to normal. Cardian, Caden, and Jiwoo appear next to Aries, as Sylvia jumps happily into Jiwoo's arms. "It is best that you leave here as soon as possible," Gareth communicated with a serious and determined tone. Caden, Cardian, and Aries turn around and Jiwoo, after bowing to the director, joins them heading towards his room. Gareth watches them head to Jiwoo's room, sighs and thinks. Hopefully they leave before more reinforcements arrive. He then turns his gaze towards Priya and comments. The best thing was not to intervene. Slowly, the students arrive and see Gareth holding Priya in his arms. "Take her to the medical room," Gareth ordered one of the guards, showing concern for Priya's condition. The guard nods and takes Priya towards the medical room, while Gareth places his hands behind her back and directs his gaze towards Inhyuk and Seonga. "I think it would be best if you leave early tomorrow," he suggests seriously. Inhyuk, Seonga, and the Korean youth frown, feeling everyone's gaze focused on them. "Don't worry. It's best for everyone." "Things are getting complicated," Gareth said in an attempt to calm the tension in the air. "Yes, Mr. Director," Inhyuk responded, bowing, followed by the rest of Korea doing the same as a sign of respect. Gareth then directs his gaze to the WAA youth and declares, "You must also return to your organizations. Tomorrow, the academy will close its doors." Surprise is reflected in everyone upon hearing these words from the director. Without waiting any longer, Gareth gets on Phoenix and leaves. If you want to access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. I'm currently on chapter 184. Chapter 163, 159, Decision. The next day, in the morning. World Awakened Academy. Gareth serenely keeps his hands behind his back as he directs his gaze forward, finding the presence of Seonga, Inhyuk, Sucheon, Jisuk, Subin, Gangsik, Wooin and Jiwoo with Sylvia resting in his arms, accompanied by 3 cats. With innate serenity, Gareth expressed it politely. It was a real pleasure to have your presence. His gaze swept over each of them before continuing. Despite the setbacks during your visit, if you wish to be part of this academy, the doors are open for you. Gareth's words caused a frown in his brows, showing a mixture of bewilderment and reflection. Meanwhile, Jiwoo, with the innocent and unalterable look of him. In-hyuk responded cautiously. Of course. His response created an awkward silence, weighing on the atmosphere like a shadow after his intervention. Gareth smiled as the seconds passed in silence after the others left. He directed his attention to Jiwoo and commented. Jiwoo, feeling somewhat uncomfortable, bowed and apologized. It's a relief they're gone. Jiwoo, feeling somewhat uncomfortable, bowed and apologized. Gareth was silent for a moment, watching Jiwoo, before sighing and letting out a small smile. He added. You don't look anything like them, but they really are identical. Astra Organization. At dawn. Muraz, wrapped in bandages that cover most of his body, kneels in front of Astra, half of his face hidden behind her cloths. Cardian is with Ares and Caden. Astra murmured. Astra paused, her eyes fixed on Muraz. And Harold was the one who attacked you, she added with coldness in his voice. Muraz looked down at the ground, not daring to meet Astra's eyes. He nodded and spoke with a trembling voice. Yes, sir. Ares faced Priya, Cardian eliminated Mauricio and Alex, and I faced Harold. Astra laughed, echoing through the room. So Cardian eliminated 2 high-ranking officials from the World Association, they won't be happy about that, Astra commented. Then, a dark purple aura was released from his body, cracking the vicinity. How is it possible that they ended so badly, having the advantage? Astra commented with a trace of anger in her voice. Sweat trickled down Muraz's forehead before he could speak. The aura disappeared and Astra ordered. Go away. If you find any trace of Harold, send someone to eliminate him. Muraz nodded and stood up nervously and added. Sir. Guyan and I used our strongest techniques at the same time, and we couldn't kill Harold. He is much stronger than we thought. It's the same as with Edward, his strength was greater than what we thought was believed. Astra frowned briefly and then said. If necessary, mobilize and use my name to take care of Harold. Muraz were surprised, nodded and bowed before leaving. Astra adopted a meditative position and thought. I need to find another solution. Immediately, he was once again enveloped in a dark purple aura. Illuminati. Harold was standing, dressed in formal black pants and shoes, while the upper part of his body was exposed, revealing his bandages. He watched through the gigantic glass window, taking in the entire base in its entirety. You were quite impulsive, uttered a female voice behind him. Harold turned and looked at Lisa, who was sitting in a leather chair at the head of a large conference table, one foot crossed over the other. On the right side of her was Tina, while on the left side was Rebecca. It was the best opportunity to try, Harold replied coldly. I was surprised that they set a trap for him. It was rumored that Astra was not very happy about someone becoming famous with poison powers, Tina commented as she adjusted her glasses. Lisa nodded and said. Yes, he was unexpected and caught us off guard. The good thing is that Edward is recovering. It would be atrocious for Teresa if her brother died. The boys are worried about what happened. Everyone nodded and Harold added. We have to do something. Astra won't leave it like that, now that I've attacked him. We must set a trap for him. It's time to reveal ourselves to the world, Lisa commented. Harold nodded and Rebecca asked. Should we let them know? I will warn them, but they will not interfere with the things we do, and it is better for them to go their own way, since it will only bring us unnecessary problems, Tina commented wisely. Lisa nodded and added, it's best for you to know, but don't get involved. They are their own organization. Rebecca nodded in agreement. South Korea. Shinhwa. Ji-young was at her desk with 2 holograms in front of her, showing Han Seonjik and Sumin Kong. I guess you already heard about the events that happened at the World Academy, Han Seonjik said seriously. Ji-young nodded with his cold face, and Sumin Kong also nodded, surprise and concern showing in his expression. I never thought that a situation like this could happen, Sumin murmured. Han Seonjik added in surprise. No one expected it. The boys are already returning to Korea, Ji-young commented. Han Seonjik and Sumin remained silent upon hearing the news. They came back sooner than we expected, commented Han Seonjik. The academy will close its doors and send all young people to their respective organizations, Ji Young added. Suman and Han Seonjik are even more surprised by the information provided by Ji Young and the decision made by the World Association. Well, now is not the time to worry about that, but we should be prepared. The good thing is that our young people are already back, healthy and safe, said Han Seonjik, after a few seconds of silence. Suman sighs in relief, while Ji Young remains silent. At the same time, in the three places where Ji Young, Han Seonjik and Suman are, a member of their organization enters and tells them some news. The three of them frown, and a trace of doubt and concern appears on their faces. After saying goodbye to the person and being alone in the room again, an awkward silence settles between them. The three of them stared at each other in anticipation, until Han Seonjik commented. Tina Spencer is here. Why would she be here? Suman said with concern. No one answered, only an awkward silence reigned. She is not the one who is rumored to belong to an unknown assassination organization. Has she come to kill someone? Suman added. I don't know, we have to investigate, Han Seonjik said seriously. I don't think so, we should ask ourselves something else, Ji Young said, catching both of their attention. They were silent, waiting for him to continue. She has a strange and mysterious personality, she likes to go unnoticed and be hidden. The weird thing is that she could easily control the security with her powers, but she didn't, Ji Young added, causing them to frown. She wants us to know that she is here, Suman said. Exactly, we should know why, Ji Young said. She's not just any awakened, she's an awakened with a power of a high rank in the top 50. It is rumored that she has killed a couple of members of the top 50, her power is at least comparable to the top 50 in the world, and most likely she is much stronger than that, Han Seonjik said seriously. I'll go see her, Ji Young commented. Han Seonjik and Suman frown upon hearing her words. She is in my territory, Ji Young said. Suman gets shocked and says. President Ji Young, if she needs help, don't hesitate to ask, I'll come right away. Han Seonjik nods and says. You have to notify the other organizations. Before he can continue talking, where Ji Young can hear the door to his office open again and another person enters, but this time very agitated and says. The top 50 of the VAT or world ranking is found in the territory of Shinhwa. Her words could be heard by both Suman and Han Seonjik, who were surprised and at the same time frowned, and concern accumulated in them. In another part of Shinhwa territory, Tina stood with her hands in her pockets, watching the city from the top of a building. Suddenly, a figure descends from the sky at high speed and falls gracefully behind her. Tina Spencer, I never thought Cyborg herself would be in this country, Vator commented with a smile. Tina turns and stares at Vator, saying. I have something to solve in this country. Vator smiles and says. I also have to attend to some issues in this country. Tina just lets out a small smile and answers. I hope we don't cause problems for each other. That's what I think. I don't have time to waste on you, and it won't benefit us to fight among ourselves. The best thing is to ally ourselves, commented Vator with a smile, extending his hand in a friendly manner. Tina frowned and then thought as she looked at Vator's body. His strength has increased by leaps and bounds after the humiliation against Ares. We're on a truce, Tina commented before taking a step and shaking hands with Vator, who smiled. This country is interesting. It was learned that he hid his powers from the world and that he has several quite strong awakened ones, said Vator. Tina just smiles and says. You didn't hide your whereabouts, so they will most likely be here very soon. You did the same thing, Vator said. I did it so they wouldn't come and bother you, but you did it so they would come and give you the information you're looking for, Tina responded. Vator put on his serious face and said. As meticulous and planning as they say. I want to see the fun, so I hope it's entertaining, Tina commented before sitting on the edge of the building. Vator, with his serious and frozen face, also advances and positions himself at the other end of the building. Likewise, he sits on the edge, waiting for his guests. If you want to access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 164, 160, Fight. A few minutes later. From the sky, Ji Young descends at high speed, placing herself between the two. Vator turns and smiles when he sees Ji Young. Then he stands up and says. South Korea's #1 woke and the alleged wife of Kaiten Break's disciple. Tina frowns upon hearing Vator's words and thinks. Did he come for her? Ji Young looks very attentively at Vator and then at Tina. The next moment, another figure descends from the sky and stands next to Ji Young. Ji Young looks at Suman with some surprise. We made a pact to help each other if someone from abroad came, so I'm here to help them, Suman said. Ji Young nodded and looked at the opponents. Vator looked at the new guest and said. Who is this guy? Tina stands up and says. He is the vice president of Baekdu and current leader of Baekdu due to the death of his older brother and his father. Ji-young and Sumin are shocked. Oh, the current leader of Baekdu, if I'm not mistaken, your organization was the one who sold the information about Kaiden's new disciple, said Vador. Sumin makes an ugly face. Interesting, it's good that I ran into you, Vador said calmly, and then his tone turned icy as he said it. Tell me where Kaiden's disciple is staying in this country. Ji-young made her face cold. I don't know, Sumin replied. You don't know, Vador said, and then added coldly. Your organization gave the information about him, and you don't know where he is. We had made a deal with your previous leader, you guys should have handed over Kaiden's disciple to me, but now you tell me that, are you breaking the deal? Vador said, creating an aura that rises into the sky and cracks everything in its path. Ji-young puts on her serious face, and Sumin is shocked and thinks. Did my brother make a deal with Grandes? Are you starting a war against my organization? Vador commented mockingly. Cold sweat began to fall on Sumin's forehead, worried and not knowing how to react. Stop it, Ji-young said, catching Vador off guard, who looks at her and removes the aura from her, smiling with interest. Interesting, why do you intervene? Vador asked with interest. Whatever that deal was, it was with the previous leader of Baekdu, Ji-young said. Tina, listening to everything, was surprised and then smiled. Ha 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 ha. Vador laughed and then added, why don't you tell Frame that? I would like to be present. Ji-young frowned uncomprehendingly. Vador smiled upon seeing his expression and commented, looking at Sumin. It seems your former leader is hiding a lot of things. Baekdu is not the only one who made a deal with me, but also with Frame, Vador said. Sumin's face turns pale, as Ji-young looks at him. Vador looks into Ji-young's eyes and says. You're a brave girl, but do you think Ares and Kaiten will save you because you're intervening in this? Unlike what people think, they don't meddle in other people's business. Do you think they will save you? Ji-young, with his serious face, looks at Vador. Well, it doesn't matter, Vador said indifferently. Then, he added with a threatening tone. Get off me, or I'll finish you off. Ji-young doesn't move an inch, drawing Vador's anger and Sumin's surprise. If that's what you want, Vador said, and a light descended from the sky, crashing into the building and destroying it completely. Flying, Ji-young appears in the dust, while Tina is also floating, standing in the same place where the building used to be. Tina slowly makes her shield disappear and takes a step, slowly walking away. In the building behind Ji-young, there is Sumin, who takes a step and says. I will fight you. Ji-young shakes her head and says. Stay behind. Sumin is surprised and tries to do something, but Ji-young doesn't think anything of it. Then, Sumin looks at Tina, who is very relaxed, waiting for the match and thinks. I have to make sure she doesn't intervene, no matter what. Vador is covered in a purple aura and a spear forms in his hand. He takes it and gets into a fighting stance. Ji-young, with her eyes fixed on his enemy, created a special isolation and adjusted his posture, ready for the confrontation. Vador, surrounded with a purple aura, disappeared from his place and appeared a few meters away from Ji-young. He drew an arc through the air with his spear, leaving behind flashes of energy. Ji-young, alert to every detail, anticipated the attack and used the wind to increase his speed and dodge the attack. Vador reacted and quickly changed the direction of her spear upon seeing his attack fail, launching another counterattack. Vador and Ji-young faced each other skillfully, each looking for the perfect moment to attack and defend. Vador's spear moved with superhuman speed, creating hypnotic patterns in the air. Ji-young dodged the attacks with precise movements. In the blink of an eye, he counterattacks with a gust of wind towards Vador. However, he blocked each of his spear attacks, demonstrating impressive defensive ability. The consequences of the confrontation are becoming greater and greater, buildings in a large area begin to be destroyed. Vador slashed towards Ji-young and impaled her, taking Vador by surprise, who looks up and sees Ji-young releasing several gusts of wind. Vador claims the spear from him and spins it around, causing it to collide with Ji-young's attack. Defense and attack collide, forming a huge explosion. Sumin, from afar, watches the battle in amazement, all the while concentrating on not being affected. On the other hand, Tina watches the battle with interest and comments. I guess it's about time Vador took this seriously. Vador on the ground looks at Ji-young, also on the ground a few meters away. A terrifying purple aura is released from his body and the spear becomes darker. Ji-young also releases his aura. The two huge auras collide. Vador smiles and lunges at Ji-young. Blade Storm. The two attacks collide, creating a large expansion wave. The dust disappears and Ji-young, with slight injuries and her face pale, looks at Vador, who has small scratches on his body, some dripping blood, and with his clothes slightly torn, without his hat. Vador looks at the hat on the ground next to him, broken in a very bad state. His face slowly turned ugly, and he glared at Ji-young, saying, That was my favorite hat. Sumin sees the situation with concern and quickly approaches Ji-young. Tina, from afar, looks at him and says with a smile. He is quite angry. Vator looks ugly at Tina and doesn't respond. Tina's words also gained Ji Young and Suman's attention. It was interesting to see the battle, Tina commented. You should have learned long ago to take fights seriously, but continue with your arrogant attitude, Tina added. Vator doesn't take his intense gaze off of Tina. At the same time, Tina looks at Ji Young and Suman and says, I hope they don't bother me and nothing will happen. Wait. Vator said. Tina turns and looks at Vator, asking. What? If you want to access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 165, 161, Why did I come? You come here for Caden's disciple, right? Vator asked. Ji Young, now more recovered and breathing normally, and a worried Suman, look at Tina. Yes and no, Tina responded. Vator smiles and says, extending a hand. Let's help each other, together we can beat them. Jiwoo. Ji Young thought nervously. Tina shook her head and said. I don't come looking for them to fight, I come for something else. Vator, Suman, and Ji Young frown. It is said that you belong to the same organization as Harold and Edward. Vator commented and then added. Did they come to recruit you? Tina frowned and said. No, and she then added coldly. You are asking a lot of questions that are not at your level. Vator smiled, and his aura covered him again, saying. Then we are enemies. Tina sighed contemptuously and answered. You should know that you are no match for me. Vator looks intently at Tina and her spear reforms in her hand, surrounded by an immense purple aura. We'll see, Vator said and attacked Tina. Ji Young and Suman are surprised by Vator's attitude, but then they are happy because they are not on the same side. Vator was heading at high speed towards Tina, launching an attack with her spear. Tina looks calmly at Vator, raises his arm and sparkles her fingers. A huge explosion forms, destroying everything in its path and generating a large shock wave that makes the entire place reverberate with a loud noise. Ji Young quickly creates a windshield, and for his part, Suman also creates a shield. The shock wave covers them, Ji Young has no problem resisting it, but Suman does not have such an ease in protecting herself. Vator, who the attack was aimed at, opened his eyes in surprise and quickly used his spear to cover himself, receiving the entire attack. Due to the strong impact of the explosion, which is concentrated on him, he is sent flying backwards, crashing into several buildings. When he crashes into 3 buildings, he manages to stop and control his body, slowing his speed and looking into the distance at Tina in surprise. This power. Vator thought in amazement. Suman watches very worried as the situation develops and is shocked by the power shown by Tina. For his part, Ji Young is frowning upon seeing the attack, but manages to remain calm and cautiously analyzes the situation. Vator, a few meters away from Tina, looks at her and says. Your strength is much higher than what is supposed, but it is within my assumption. I know that you have defeated more than one awakened person who is in the top 50 of the world rankings. Vator, I don't feel like wasting my time with you, but if you want, I have no problem facing you. You must bear the consequences of such an act, Tina said with a cold and imposing voice as a terrifying aura was released from her body. Vator grimaces and says with discontent. You're lucky I have to take care of my power and not get hurt. Tina removes the aura from her and calmly looks at Vator, who removes the spear from him and turns to leave. Then, he looks at Ji Young calmly and the next moment, her spatial isolation disappears. Ji Young looks at Tina and says. Thank you. Suman carefully looks at Tina and also bows. Don't confuse things, Tina said, making them frown, and then she added. For me, I wouldn't have intervened, I only defended myself when she attacked me. If I had decided to exterminate you, I would have done it. Ji Young and Suman make ugly faces. Now you have to worry about how to survive, don't forget that your organization made a deal with Frame and Grandes and didn't keep its end. They know better the consequences of such acts in our world, Tina added. Suman turned pale with nervousness and fear. Tina looked at Ji Young and commented. And you interfered, so bear the consequences. Ji Young looked at her with her serious face. Tina didn't wait for a response, she turned around and slowly walked away from the place. Ji Young just stared at her with her hands behind her, radiating calm. Worried, Suman looks at Ji Young's calmness in amazement and thinks. President Yu is very strong. She was able to fight hand-to-hand with a top 50 in the world ranking, and not with just anyone. Lately, he took it upon himself to fight with other top 50 and come out alive. Suman bows and says. Thank you very much, President Yu. Ji Young lets out a smile and says. Don't worry, it's my duty as the most powerful woke in this country. A few hours later. Seoul Airport. Ji Young, Han Seonjik, and Suman watch the plane in the distance, slowly approaching until it stops in front of them. The three of them were silent with their faces serious. In Ji-young and Suman there is no sign of what happened before. A few minutes later, the plane doors open and Jiwoo is the first to get off, amazed to see them. Nuna. Jiwoo said with a smile. Ji-young smiled and behind Jiwoo appeared Jisuk, Subin and Woon watching. Han Seonjik frowned as he saw Sylvia in Jiwoo's arms, and they started to go down the stairs. Gangsik and Sucheon appeared, and behind them Inhyuk and Seonga. They all went down and at the last three cats appeared yawning. Sister, what are you doing here? Jisuk asked. President, Inhyuk pronounced. Then the others helped Han Seonjik and Suman. I came to look for you, Ji-young commented. Cardian frowned at them and thought. Something should have happened for them to come pick them up. Sucheon looks at his uncle without showing a trace of joy. Come on. Suman asked Sucheon, who nodded and left for his car. Suman glanced at him and said goodbye to everyone present. Han Seonjik and Ji-young watch the boys chat happily when Jiwoo approaches them. Han Seonjik looks at Jiwoo and says. I knew what happened there. Jiwoo is surprised and says. Do you already know? Ji-young nods and Han Seonjik responds. The news flies. Jiwoo scratches his head with a shy smile. I never thought Caden would be so strong, facing a top 10 and seriously injuring him. I don't know if it's true, but already facing a top 10 and coming out alive is incredible. And Ares, exterminate those three guys from the World Association. Han Seonjik thought, looking at Jiwoo and sighed heavily. If you want to access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 166, 162, Situation. Jiwoo House. Jiwoo was alone on the couch, accompanied only by Cardian in his cat form sitting on another couch resting. Jiwoo looked at Cardian with concern and asked. Are they very bad? Cardian frowned and considered. They have had a lot of fights in a short period of time. Ares just needs to eliminate the energy of his opponents that hinders his regeneration and he will recover soon. He will be fine in a month at most. But Caden. That idiot fought while seriously injured against Andre and, despite his incredible regeneration power, he will need several months, even years, to recover. He had the energy of those three guys he faced in his body, and now he has the energy of one more that will make it very difficult for him to recover. They're fine, they just need a little time to recover, Cardian replied seriously. Jiwoo felt guilty and expressed sadness. It's my fault, if I hadn't taken that step forward they wouldn't have had to get involved. Cardian frowned again and answered. No. Those guys came for those young people from the World Academy, and seeing you there they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to eliminate another possible competitor. He looked away seriously and thought. Those guys probably wanted to get rid of the two of them in one fell swoop knowing they're here, but they didn't know about Caden's strength. I have to be stronger, Jiwoo murmured, getting up from the couch and placing himself on the floor in a meditation position, closing his eyes and breathing evenly, surrounded by a blue aura. Cardian sighed and thought. These damn crazy people, they never get bored of training. Ding ding. At that moment, the doorbell rang, drawing Jiwoo and Cardian's attention. Who will it be? Jiwoo asked doubtfully, and stood up to open the door, revealing Tina. Jiwoo was surprised and said. Tub. Cardian frowned and quickly looked at Tina, wondering. What is he doing here? Tina smiled and asked. I can pass. Jiwoo nodded, and they entered the house. Tina looked at the house with interest and then looked at the malnourished white cat, without giving it much importance. She sat on one of the couches and Jiwoo sat next to Cardian. I won't take up much of your time, I noticed you were training, Tina commented. Jiwoo scratched his head and said. I need to be stronger. It's good to have that mentality, Tina responded with a smile. Then, her face became serious, making Jiwoo and Cardian frown. Are Caden, Ares, or Cardian found? Tina asked. No, they are recovering, Jiwoo replied. Well, it doesn't matter, I'll give the information to you so you can pass it on to them when they come out of their training, said Tina. They attacked Edward, now he is seriously injured. His life is not in danger, but we decided to go to war against a top 10 who was the one who attacked him, Tina said coldly. Cardian was surprised and thought. Edward, that guy. And then, alarmed, he thought. Could be. Against a top 10. Jiwoo repeated in surprise. The organization led by Astra attacked Edward, Tina stated seriously. Tina stood up and affirmed. I want you to pass it on to your brother, your teacher, and Cardian. We will take care of everything, you don't need to intervene, we will let you know if we need your help. We will finish them off, Tina declared confidently. Jiwoo opened his eyes, surprised. Give him that news, please, Tina said. She turned and walked towards the door to leave, but she stopped and added. Also, Vador is here, be careful, I'll keep an eye out for anything anyway, you don't need to be nervous. Jiwoo, still stunned, watched as Tina quickly left, leaving the place silent. Cardian frowned and transformed into his human form, muttering seriously. This got complicated. Jiwoo looked at Cardian and asked. Is it that serious? Who is Vator? Vator is a powerful awakened in the top 50 of the world rankings, and he has a very deep enmity against Caden and Ares, Cardian pronounced, astonished Jiwoo. It wouldn't be worrying if we were in our best condition, but we are not in our best moment, Cardian commented. But I'm enough to take on anyone who dares to come, so you shouldn't worry, Cardian added. Jiwoo nodded, but still worried. After a moment of silence he reacted and asked. How will Teresa be? Cardian frowned and remained silent. Jiwoo, worried, called her quickly, having a conversation. Meanwhile, Cardian quietly retreated to an empty room to recover. Xinhua. Ji-young was looking out the window at the city, and In-hyuk was behind her with his hands behind her back. It's true? Ji-young asked. Yes, her powers are incredible. I have never seen something of that magnitude, In-hyuk responded, shocked. Especially Caden's power, it was of another magnitude, In-hyuk added with a cold sweat and a fearful expression. Ji-young sighed and said. Caden is known for being a formidable awakener. He even surprised you so much, I guess the rumors about him don't compare to his real power. Yes. In-hyuk responded with a slight tremor in his body. I'm glad the boys came back healthy, Ji-young commented. In-hyuk clenched his fist tightly, full of helplessness, and said. We couldn't do anything to protect the boys. His powers were at another level, we even had problems resisting the aftermath of the confrontations. Ji-young turned and looked at In-hyuk with a warm smile. Don't worry, it's over and they're safe. The next moment, a person entered the office and said seriously. President, Tina has gone to see Jiwoo. Ji-young frowned seriously and In-hyuk was surprised. Tina. In-hyuk thought. The man left the office after observing the gesture that In-hyuk made with his face. That woman. In-hyuk asked, looking at Ji-young in surprise. Ji-young nodded and said. I'll go see Jiwoo. Take charge of everything while I'm gone. Yes, President, In-hyuk answered. Awakened Union. Deline sat with one foot on the other, very comfortably in the chair, looking at the old man before him. I don't want to. Deline said with a contemptuous smile. The old man looked at him emotionlessly. Why should I do it? I don't earn anything and we don't have any relationship for you to ask me for a favor, Deline commented coldly. The old man clenched his fist and turned to leave without saying a word. He walked lost in thought when suddenly he heard someone calling him. Grandpa, said a voice from ahead with surprise and joy. The old man looked up and saw Subin with Seonga and Woon entering the door, walking towards them. President, Seonga commented. Woon looked at the old man in front of him in surprise. The old man looked at Woon, recognizing him immediately, and then at Subin, saying coldly. What is that outfit you are wearing? Subin trembled. Woon looked at the situation in surprise, and Seonga remained silent. Let's go home, we have to talk, said the old man. Yes, Subin replied instantly, while Seonga and Woon watched Subin walk away. Woon, you can go see your teacher, Seonga commented. Woon nodded and went to his teacher, remembering what had just happened. If you want to help me, you can access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 167, 163, Reality. The next day, Ji-young arrived at Jiwoo's house, and they had a conversation about Tina's visit. After a few days passed, Subin still did not contact any of them. Jisuk told them what the union president was like after Woon told them that he had returned. For his part, Cardian was recovering while he investigated Vator's whereabouts. At night, Cardian was on top of a building, watching the city while he thought. Vator has disappeared. I've been taking a look at the sector and there is no sign of him. Is he gone? That's not his style. This is annoying, he will appear at the worst time. Cardian continued to recover at Jiwoo's house, while Jiwoo continued training. The next day. Awakened Union. Jiwoo, standing at the entrance, looks at the building. Just as he was going to enter, he hears footsteps behind him and turns to see Seonga standing a little behind an older man. Jiwoo is surprised and bows slightly, saying, Good morning. Seonga smiles and answers. You're here for Subin, right? Jiwoo nods, and Seonga points to the old man next to him, saying, He is the president of the union. Jiwoo is amazed and bows to greet him, while the old man watches him carefully. I was worried about my friend. She hasn't come to visit us, and she doesn't respond to messages. I thought something bad might have happened to her, Jiwoo explains. Seonga frowns. Friend. Subin's grandfather murmurs. Jiwoo frowns and says. Yeah. Subin's grandfather speaks forcefully and coldly in his face to Jiwoo. You are the disciple of Caden Break, and your brother is the Emperor of Light. You are a brat who can walk free in the world with the power to subjugate and repress others, without caring about anyone or anything. But Subin is not like you. She must lead the Union in the future, and she does not have time to waste it like you do. You think the world is rosy because you have all that power with you to rule it, but people are greedy. The power of your master or brother is something that the awakened would give everything to have, even to obtain a small part, and you have both. Do you think that the friends you call will not betray you to take the power from you? Jiwoo frowns at such words and stares at Subin's grandfather, answering. Subin wouldn't be able to do something like that. Subin's grandfather responds coldly. Are you really sure? Jiwoo clenches his fist and responds with sternness and firmness in his eyes. I'm sure, she wouldn't do something like that. She also doesn't have the ability to obtain it either, Jiwoo said without taking his eyes off Subin's grandfather. That. Subin's grandfather says with some surprise as Seonga frowns. I haven't had to fight seriously against anyone my age, and with Subin's skills, she doesn't have the ability to defeat me, Jiwoo replies, adding. My teacher told me to lengthen the fight so he could learn as much as possible, and that's what I've done. A cold aura appears around the Union president's body, and says. Kid, you are too arrogant to say those words in front of me about Subin. Jiwoo feels a shiver run through his body, but she doesn't avoid her gaze. President Seonga intervenes. The icy aura disappears, and the old man takes a step to enter the Union. Seonga looks at Jiwoo and follows his president. Jiwoo turns and watches them go deeper into the building. After a few minutes of waiting for Subin, Jiwoo doesn't see her anywhere and leaves. In a hidden corner, Han Seonjik watches everything silently leaning against a wall. Han Seonjik had a conversation with Subin's grandfather, and upon leaving, he noticed the poor condition and the great change in Subin. He had another conversation with her, telling her about her grandfather's health. In turn, after the shock of finding out about her grandfather's bad condition and receiving a large number of messages from Woon, Jisuk and Jiwoo, Sunin couldn't take it anymore and went to see them. Finally, he exploded, and it began to rain in front of them, pouring out his sadness and frustration through their tears. At night. Jiwoo's house. Jiwoo was very sad, lying on the couch, while Cardian looked at him. He cares so much about others, Cardian thought, sighing. Minutes passed and Jiwoo didn't speak, he was lost in his thoughts until he looked at Cardian and thought. Mr. Cardian couldn't cure him. But will he accept if I ask him to? Mr. Cardian, Jiwoo said after thinking about it for a while. Cardian looked at Jiwoo and answered. That. You can cure Subin's grandfather, Jiwoo asked timidly. Cardian was surprised by Jiwoo's request and then frowned for a moment, making Jiwoo nervous, and answered. I can cure it, but I won't. Jiwoo was happy when he heard the first part and then was surprised at the second. Then he with a rare smile of gratitude and said. I understand, thank you for at least considering it. Cardian looked at Jiwoo seriously and said. I would have cured him because you asked me to, but we are not in a very good situation. You know that when I use my powers to heal someone, I am helpless. Jiwoo nodded in understanding as he frowned. Cardian continued seriously. I'm the only one in the best shape to protect us. Vator is here, and his personality is not very good. I need all my power to face him. Caden tries to heal himself as much as he can during this brief time when there are no powerful enemies. He left your protection under my care, and right now what I do is protect you. Ares will be out in a few days and Caden will stay recovering for a few more days, Cardian concluded. Jiwoo immediately understood the situation that Cardian wanted to make him understand. I understand, Mr. Cardian, Jiwoo replied. Jiwoo, you should focus on training, instead of worrying so much about other people's things, Cardian said. Jiwoo lowered his head and responded. I know, but I can't help it. Cardian transformed into his human form and said. Train, I have to go out for a moment, and he immediately left the house. Jiwoo looked at him with doubts, but he didn't think anything bad and dedicated himself to training. If you want to help me, you can access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 168, 164, My Face. Cardian took to the skies before descending on a building, where a mysterious figure waited. Vator, with a smile on his face, turned towards the figure and was surprised to discover that it was Cardian. Cardian, Vator murmured in surprise. Vator. I hope you leave this place immediately, said Cardian. Vator frowned. How did you get here? It was supposed to be Caden or Ares who showed up, or some annoying awakened from this nation, Vator said. You don't need to know, Cardian replied. A vein appeared on Vator's forehead, and his face became deformed, showing his anger. Cardian. He uttered with irritation. I don't know what you're doing here, but I'm very lucky to be able to see you, Vator added with a big smile. Cardian frowned slightly and said. You are causing a lot of problems for my peace of mind, it is best that you leave. Vator pretended not to hear and said as he touched the wound on his face. Cardian, heal me. Cardian, with his cold face, responded. No. Vator, with a worried and desperate tone, added. Ask for whatever you want, I will owe you a favor if you want, I will not ask, and I will fulfill it. Cardian smiled and said. Do you think your favor will work for me? Vator looks angrily upon seeing Cardian's contempt, remains calm and says. I heard you have problems with the World Association. I could help you eliminate someone. Cardian frowned and replied. Your organization belongs to the World Awakened Association. Are you willing to betray them? Vator smiles and answers. I don't care about those guys, they only care about themselves, and you know it better than anyone, you look for your own benefit. Why do you think I can heal your wound? Cardian asked with interest, making Vator frown. You are Cardian, the best healer on the planet, commented Vator. Ha 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 ha. Cardian laughed as his face filled with ecstasy, astonishing Vator. You are right, I am the great Cardian, the best healer on the planet. No one can compare to me, Cardian said arrogantly. Vator looked dumbly at the excited Cardian and thought. I didn't know his personality was so strange to this extent. Cardian was silent for a moment and said. I can't heal you. You're not hurt, it would be very difficult for me to remove your scar. But you can try, Vator said anxiously. Cardian looked at Vator and thought. Trying to cure him might be the best way to get him to go away quickly, and otherwise he will be very insistent. Then he said. I won't promise you anything. Take me to where you're staying. Ator, very happy, responded quickly. Sure, and he left quickly. In a lonely place, Vator lay with his eyes closed on a wooden table, while Cardian stood in front of him. Both of his hands were surrounded by a golden aura, located at the level of his face. Cardian examines Vator's wound calmly and then removes his hands from him, saying. Your wound is very old. I don't think I can remove your scar, although recovering your left eye wouldn't be difficult. Vator opens his eyes and says. Try. He clenches his fists and continues. Please. Cardian is surprised and responds. Remember your favor. Vator nods and adds. I won't ask questions, just let me know and I'll help you. Cardian places his hands over Vator's eyes, and he feels a sensation of sleep that he cannot resist, surrendering to the energy until he falls completely asleep. I assumed he would put up a fight, Cardian thought, shaking his head. His hands light up again as a golden aura covers Vator's entire body. The sooner I start, the sooner I'll finish. A golden aura completely enveloped the room as Cardian focused all of his attention on healing Vator's eye. The hours passed quickly, and the scars on Vator's face slowly diminished. Cardian sighed and removed his hands, causing the aura to disappear. He looked closely at Vator's face, now without any scars. I thought his wounds were healed, but when I checked his body I realized that he still had hidden wounds that he didn't realize, and they made it easier for me to remove the scar. He fought a lot lately, I guess his body hasn't fully recovered. A few minutes passed until Vator woke up and saw Cardian in front of him. He stood up and realized that he could see through his previously closed eye. Happiness flooded his being, he quickly went to a mirror at the side of the room and watched with surprise and ecstasy at his completely healed face, while he slowly touched where his ugly scars used to be. Ha ha ha. Vator laughed like a madman, seeing his recovered face. Cardian looked at him dumbly and thought. What's wrong with this crazy man? Thank you. Vator said as he turned and looked at Cardian. Cardian did not answer, he turned around and said. Leave as soon as possible and do not disturb my peace anymore. Vator silently watched Cardian leave and then looked at himself in the mirror again, saying as he touched his face. Finally, my beautiful face is back. Jiwoo's house. Jiwoo was in the dining room in a meditation position, surrounded by a blue aura, until he heard the door open. He opened his eyes and saw Cardian enter. Mr. Cardian, Jiwoo said, quickly standing up and approaching Cardian. Finally, he came back. He was very worried about you. Last night he left and didn't come back. I thought something bad had happened, Jiwoo commented with concern and happiness when he saw Cardian perfectly fine. Cardian calmly advanced, sat down, and responded. I went to settle the matter with Vator. Jiwoo was surprised and quickly sat down next to Cardian. How did he do? Of course, I fixed it. He already left, Cardian responded. Jiwoo's eyes flashed, and he said. Wow. I didn't expect anything less from you, Mr. Cardian. Cardian, proudly, said. Sure, we talked a little and I solved it instantly. At this moment, someone came down the stairs, catching everyone's attention. Ares, dressed in a black suit without a tie and a white shirt, looked at them and said. I see you had some difficulties while I was recovering. Brother, Jiwoo said. Cardian frowned at Ares, analyzing him and thinking. I shouldn't have come out so soon. Anyway, it doesn't recover that quickly. He needs a few more weeks to be at full power again. Aries looked at the house and asked Jiwoo. Where did Sylvia go? Jiwoo scratches his head and answers. He left, he said he was going to go for a walk. Aries sighs and says. Because they are rebellious. Then he thought. It would be helpful to have her around, but her attitude is special. She can't stay in one place for a long time. Aries moved forward and sat down, saying. Give me an update on what has happened these days. If you want to help me, you can access the chapters earlier, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 169, 165, Healing. At an early hour that day, Deline began treatment for Subin's grandfather. Meanwhile, Cardian was in the process of recovering, as was Aries, who took the form of a cat, and Jiwoo was dedicated to training in the dining room. Jiwoo's house. Jisuk and Woon entered with serious expressions and a heavy silence. Jiwoo looked at them and gave them a smile. Guys. They both sat down seriously, fixing their gazes on Jiwoo, who sat down and looked at them uneasily. My master is trying to cure Subin's grandfather, Woon commented. Joy lit up Jiwoo's face. Excellent. However, Woon quickly added, extinguishing Jiwoo's happiness. But he can't heal him completely, his skills don't focus on healing, his skills aren't enough. Jiwoo sighed and said. Your teacher tried his best. After a brief dialogue, the young people decided to visit and support Subin in this difficult time. In the house, only Kaiten, recovering in the basement, and Aries and Cardian were left. Aries, in his cat form, struggled to climb onto the couch and expressed irritation. I'm still not used to this damn cat body, baby. He managed to settle down and asked. Are you going to cure him? Cardian looked at Aries and responded. Jiwoo asked me, I have already resolved the problem with Vador. Aries nodded and asked. Do you want my point of view, or are you just going to do it? Cardian stated. I'll do it because Jiwoo asked me to. Aries sighed and commented disdainfully. For me, let that old man die. His words made Cardian frown, but he decided not to give it any more importance. I need you to protect the place tomorrow. He asked Cardian to Aries, who nodded before returning to training. Cardian, with one foot on the other, seriously watched Aries as he exercised and reflected. I didn't imagine Aries would have such a marked aversion to that old man. The day passed quickly, and before he knew it, the next one arrived. Awakened Union. Cardian was visibly irritated along with Han Seongjik, Subin, Seonga, Jisuk, Deline, Woon and other Union members. They were in front of a door, guarding the place where Subin's grandfather lay. Cardian's bad mood filled the hallway, creating a dense atmosphere that discouraged anyone from daring to speak. Footsteps echoed and everyone turned their attention to Aries, who approached dressed in an elegant black suit, without a tie, and wearing formal shoes. His right hand rested casually in his pants pocket, while his left covered her yawn with disinterest. A/N, that will be his new outfit. Cardian, upon seeing him, expressed his bad mood in a sharp tone. I told you to be on time. The surprise was reflected in everyone, except Cardian. Aries concluded his yawn and responded with disinterest. I'm here now. Brother, Jiwoo uttered. Aries looked up and looked at them all, but then looked away without even giving them a greeting. Anytime you want, you can start. I won't let anyone bother you, Aries commented disinterestedly. Cardian nodded and entered the room. Aries glanced at the guards, who felt a shiver run through their bodies and quickly bowed, fear showing in their eyes. Aries leaned against a wall and turned his gaze towards Jiwoo. Brother, you came, Jiwoo expressed. Aries nodded and responded. Cardian asked me to protect him. They listened to their conversation, but no one dared to interrupt it. Thank you, Jiwoo said with a smile. Subin stepped forward, bowed and expressed. Thank you, Mr. Aries. Afterwards, Jisuk and Woon imitated the gesture. Aries looked at them and commented indifferently. Don't thank me, let that old man die for me. His words caused everyone to freeze, even Han Seongjik frowned. Subin trembled and looked up, looking into Aries' eyes as he stammered. Mr. Aries sighed and added. Don't talk to me, we are not acquaintances. I hope your grandfather gets better, but you have to remember something, in this world, everything has a cost, Aries added. The place was plunged into a deep silence. Aries closed his eyes and a golden aura surrounded him, surprising everyone present. Is he even going to train right now? Han Seongjik thought in amazement, while Seonga pondered. Even now, he will continue training. Subin, distracted and flustered by Aries' words, was woken up by Jiwoo. Subin, don't take my brother's words so seriously. Sit down, your grandfather will recover. Jiwoo took an arm and helped her sit up. Woon and Jisuk also helped her. Jiwoo helped her sit up, and Woon and Jisuk also offered their support. Time passed quickly and Northwest One left the place. They remained every day waiting for Cardian to come out. Finally, a few days later, Cardian emerged with a somewhat fatigued expression and moving his joints. As soon as he came out, the young people surrounded him, focusing their attention on him. Cardian looked at them and a silence fell over the place as he announced. I've already cured him. The last part of his treatment can be done by himself. The boys smiled and expressed their gratitude. Cardian turned his gaze towards Ares, who was still continuing to train him. In an instant, both of them exchanged glances, understanding without words. They both took a step forward and left the place. If you want to help me join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead. Chapter 170, 166, Looking for Her. Jiwoo's house. Basement. Caden was in his human form as he stood in a meditative position, surrounded by an intense blue aura. Opening his eyes, he inhaled and exhaled slowly, dissipating its glow before standing up. He clenched his fist in satisfaction. I'm almost fully recovered. I'll just need a few more weeks, and I'll be back to 100%, he reflected, feeling the condition of his body with a smile on his face. Being fully fit is the best thing. I'm looking forward to it. I'll train some more and try to assimilate everything I learned from my last few fights. 3 days later. Jiwoo was sitting, looking at the phone with deep concern as it rang silently. Is he still not answering you? Asked Cardian. Jiwoo nodded anxiously and answered. He hasn't contacted me for a week now. Cardian touched his chin and looked at Ares. Hey, has your mother gotten back to you? Ares shook his head and replied. I don't talk to her much. We used to talk every day before, but lately, I'm more focused on training. Besides, since she knows I'm with Jiwoo, she doesn't worry if I don't answer her. What does she work at? Asked Cardian. In a pharmaceutical, replied Jiwoo. He doesn't just work in a pharmaceutical, Ares interjected, surprising Jiwoo and making Cardian frown. The pharmaceutical is just a front. He actually works in a lab where they conduct experiments on humans and awakened, Ares added. Jiwoo stood up with a start, concern showing on his face, while Cardian frowned seriously. My mother works where they do experiments on humans and awakened, Jiwoo muttered. Ares nodded. But it's not like you think. She helps awakened and humans escape from that terrible place. Cardian frowned even more. Something could have happened to her. We have to go find her, Jiwoo said anxiously. Ares replied calmly. Relax. Our mother has a mark from me. When the energy I left in her activates, it will create an attack and the mark hasn't activated yet. She shouldn't be in any real danger. But we should still go see her, Jiwoo added. Ares looked at Jiwoo and said. Buy a ticket and let's go. Jiwoo nodded and stated, I'll let Mr. Caden know. In another part of the world. The next day, in the afternoon. At the top of the building, on the edge, they watched who entered the drugstore. Jiwoo, this will be your first undercover mission, said Ares. Jiwoo nodded with seriousness on his face. Try to get any information about our mother, added Ares. Yes, replied Jiwoo and walked away. Cardian and Caden watched Jiwoo descend and enter the building. Do you think he'll find anything? Asked Caden to Ares. No. This pharmaceutical is just a front to hide their true intentions. They must not know or have any data on the people who know about the other side of their company, explained Ares. Caden and Cardian nodded. Oin. Jiwoo entered the building and scanned his surroundings as he made his way to the front desk, where a young, blonde-haired woman stood. He approached her and struck up a conversation, asking about his mother. The more he asked, the fewer answers he got from the receptionist, until a man with dark skin, short hair, and formal dress approached him, accompanied by 2 guards and spoke to him. Jiwoo looked him straight in the eye and thought, my brother told me this pharmacist was just a front. Does this guy know my mother? That's weird. I'm looking for Yujong Kong, Jiwoo replied innocently, but alert to any movement. Dr. Yujong, the man repeated with some surprise, which he quickly concealed, and asked. Why are you looking for her? She's my mother, replied Jiwoo. Her mother. Who would think that Dr. Yujong would hide something like that, thought the man. The man smiled and said. I can take you to her, you just need to follow me, pointing towards the exit. Jiwoo smiled, thanked and followed the men. From the roof, Cardian, Caden, and Ares watched the situation with frowns. Jiwoo climbed into the car, 10 minutes passed, then 20, and he still saw nothing. He was now in a place with no trace of civilization. How much further? Asked Jiwoo. We're getting there, just wait a bit, replied the men driving. Jiwoo sighed and said. You've been saying that for quite a while now. You better tell me where you're taking me. The men driving sighed and said. Make him sleep. One of the guards pulled out a syringe and tried to stick it in Jiwoo's neck, but he easily dodged it. The men threw a punch, Jiwoo evaded it and twisted his hand, breaking bones. "Aya!" cried the men in pain. "You should have a little more respect," said Jiwoo, throwing a punch with the same hand, connecting in the jaw and sending the men flying, destroying the door and falling unconscious. The car skidded, stopped, and the driver and the other guard got out of the car. Jiwoo calmly got out and looked at them without fear. "You're an awakened one," the men said seriously. Jiwoo did not respond. The men smiled and said to the guard, "Catch." The guard nodded, moved at high speed, pulled out a gun and fired. A blue aura formed on Jiwoo's right hand, caught the bullets and dropped them to the ground. Instantly, Jiwoo vanished from his position and reappeared in front of the guard. A blunt blow to his stomach sent him flying, creating a crater in the ground and highlighting the impressive force of the impact. The men turned slowly, watching his coworker being hit, and thought with surprise. "I couldn't follow his movement, how can this guy be so fast?" Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Jiwoo appear and throw a punch at him. His eyes widened like saucers as he took the impact all over his head, being thrown backwards and crashing into the car. Jiwoo observes the scene, analyzing the situation and thinks, "These guys are no ordinary humans, their strength goes beyond what a normal human could have." The man stands up, dizzy and with a loud ringing in his head from the blow. In desperation, he pulls a small-sized circular object from his pocket and places it on his neck. His body begins to grow, and a silvery liquid falls from his lip. Jiwoo frowns as he sees what he is doing. The man jumps and, with the momentum of the fall, throws a powerful punch towards Jiwoo, who is waiting for it. His right arm lights up with a blue aura, and he throws a punch, clashing fist with fist. At the slightest contact, a great amount of electricity is produced, accompanied by an agonized scream that floods the place. The man is left kneeling in front of Jiwoo, holding his completely burned arm, as he returns to his usual state. The man, with pain on his face and a shocked expression, looks at Jiwoo and thinks, "This kid. How can he be so strong? I don't know any awakened family with such power. Is he really Dr. Yujong's son?" Jiwoo, his eyes cold, looks down with a hint of contempt and asks, "Where is my mother?" The man does not answer. "I won't repeat it again, where is my mother?" reiterated Jiwoo coldly. A/N, I started to publish my own novel. If you want to give it a try, the first 2 chapters are available in web novel. If you want to help me, join my Patreon. More than 25 chapters ahead.